Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight it is a special edition that the UFO Report has been released, and we have put together a power panel for you tonight. We are not going to be doing Swamp Dweller tonight. There will not be any Super Duke. There probably will not be any sort of Dave 101. It's an important night tonight because of the UFO Report that dropped earlier today. We have special guests for you tonight. Tim Seanor from the UFO Report, Graeme Rendall, author and researcher Nicole Sakach from the Fifth Pillar of Emphasis on TikTok. We have Dan the Man Warren, Don Schmidt, researcher, Roswell expert, Cristina Gomez, journalist and researcher and former government employee Walter Bosley is here as well. Before we bring in our panel tonight, let us say hello to all of you out there in our chat rooms. Let's start off with Race Fan in the gold medal position tonight. And then it is followed up by Penny Van with a silver, Susie B with the bronze medal tonight. Nightmare, how you doing? Frank Falupa, nice to have you here. Rui from Portugal, good to see you. Judy of Gaul and Christy Crawford. Christy, welcome to SOR Chat. Anthony Ross Kennedy, welcome to SOR Chat. Human Carl, thank you for your wonderful service in the U.S. Air Force. We appreciate your service. Human Carl, by the way, will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. Jessica Rodriguez, welcome to SOR Chat. Crystal J, thank you for joining us. Hi, Mama Susan, D. Cohen, Lisa C. Area 51 is here. Area 51 will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, Kathy Evans, Kurt M., how you doing? Brown Dwarf, Brad Ford, Pink Folo, Awesome Ann B., good to have you all here. Hi, Silent Listen and Gong Show, Pixie Lara, Glenn Dannison, good to have you all here. Obi Flett, nice to have you here. Good morning, Sweet Tony D. from the UK. Digger Dog, good to see you. Malaya Grimm, welcome to SOR Chat. Hi, W. David Page, how you doing? Enzo, another great veteran. Thanks for coming on in. Tech 702. I do not have pants on for tonight. No, I do not. Thank you for joining us, my friend. And let's see here. JSCO, Grandizer, Enki, nice to have you here. Millennium, my man. Noble Patrick, Sirius Dogon, how you doing? And there's Ozzy. Oi, oi to you. Nikki from Seattle, nice to see you. Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived, which means we can officially start this show. Glenn Dannison, nice to see you. Thank you for coming on in. And there is Pam Smith. Nice to see you. And who else do we have here? Michael Huggins from Birmingham, England. Welcome to SOR Chat. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Jen A. Nice to see you. And who else do we have? Robert Lamoth, Monica, Cecil. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Sandra. We're going to start the radio side here, so that way our radio affiliates can pick up tonight's show. And for some reason, this just blanked on me. Why did that happen? Oh, there it is. Hold on. I don't know what the heck is happening here, but it is rolling. It is rolling. Mr. L, how you doing? Let's see. Who else do we have in our chat room? And Richard Elmore, Pam Harris, Kim Stanley, thanks for coming on in. Vinman, good to see you, my friend. Richard Elmore, TMI, good to have you here. And Jessica Garaji, welcome to SOR chat. And let's see here. Who else do we have? Val, Southwest PA, nice to see you. Mark Sanchez, thanks for coming on in. And the rest of you, we're going to get to you here in a little bit. We got a power panel for you tonight. The UFO report has been dropped finally, and we are going to get to that momentarily. The super chat is open. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. So stick around for that, and let's make this a great show. We got a great panel for you of very, very, very smart people when it comes to UFOs. Horns up. Let's rock. Of central British Columbia to you listening around the world. This, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We have a very special show for you tonight, and let the speculation begin. After 3 months of waiting, we finally have the UFO report. It's been released out of Washington, D.C., and to many in the UFO land, it's a gem with many golden nuggets. To others, it's a nothing burger with little to no substance on what is truly going on with the UFO phenomena. On this special edition of Spaced Out Radio tonight, we are going the distance with a panel of guests and opinions as to whether or not we have moved closer to any sort of disclosure or if the confirmation of the UFO phenomena continues. Here is your panel for tonight. We have, from the UFO report here on Spaced Out Radio, we have Tim Seanor, United Kingdom reporter, author, Graeme Rendall, longtime researcher, author, Don Schmidt, most known for his work on the Roswell incident. From the Fifth Pillar of Emphasis on TikTok, one of the largest channels on UFOs, Dan Warren. Researcher Walter Bosley is with us as well. Nicole Sakach is back. She's a researcher extraordinaire. Researcher, journalist Cristina Gomez. Thank you so much for gathering on short notice tonight, panel. It has been a very, very busy day. And Dan Warren, I'm going to start with you on this one because I'm going to get you to unmute your mic, my friend. I'm going to start with you on this one because leading up to this point, you have used a lot of humor on your TikTok in order to say, where the heck is this report? Where is it coming from? When is it going to drop? Finally, here we are.
All right. So what he's referring to is a bunch of videos that I made where I was basically anxiously awaiting the report. So I was making a chalkboard that basically said days until the UFO report. So I got to make it a 0 today. So big moment for me. I'm saving chalk from now on. I don't have to burn through as much of it as I've been using. But it's an important day. There's not a lot of significance, in my opinion, in the report itself, but the report is the significant event for today. But then also, as soon as it was released, there was just a waterfall of other information that came out. Chris Mellon put a report out. Pat Flynn Ryder, I think is his name, the Brigadier General for the Air Force, put a made some comments at the Pentagon. Just a bunch of stuff has come out. I'm still catching up on some of it and having to make notes. But in my opinion, the biggest thing that came out today was courtesy of Dean Johnson, where he got a hold of the slideshow presentation that Sean Kirkpatrick put in front of, I can't remember the exact committee that he was speaking to about what Arrow does. And there were some gems in that. That's the one that I think that we're going to have the most fun talking about as a group.
Wow, that is a lot, and there is a lot going on. Don Schmidt, I want to bring you in here because you are someone who has been following this story, and you were considered one of the leading experts on the crash at Roswell and what happened in Corona back in 1947. When you look at this report and you see everything that's kind of playing down right now, are you looking at this, Don, as a positive step forward, or is there just not enough that we were told it was going to be a very open process, yet there's a lot more handling of this behind closed doors?
One of the elder statesmen of the panel this evening for having worked with.
Don, I apologize. I'm going to have to cut you off right there. We're literally getting about every fourth word from you. So we're going to have to work on that. Same question to you, Walter Bosley. As you have worked in the government, you have worked with this subject quite a while. You've worked on the intelligence side of everything. You know, what's your opinion?
You know, like so often these things, what I see them doing to us is just dangling carrots as far as these government reports. And I would like to see us as a community of, you know, researchers in this to kind of wean ourselves off of expecting anything from these reports, because, you know, what they do know about what we want to know, I just don't think they're going to tell us. They like to put these things out because they think that it's going to assuage the clamor, you know, that for what we want, you know, to know what they know. Now, you guys know my position. I come from a position where 99% of this, or 90% of this, in my opinion, it's going to turn out to be classified technology. They like to do the sleight of hand, and they like to downplay it in the language, which this report does, you know, with all the unremarkable this and that. But you know, the percentage that's going to be something that's not ours, you know, not of this earth or something, it's going to be very small. And I just don't see these kinds of reports revealing anything to us. So it just keeps being a disappointment.
Well, you know, disappointment or not, there was a lot of news, Graeme Rendall, on UFO Twitter today regarding this. Everybody getting excited, all the UFO Twitterites, you know, jumping in the air, you know, giving their fist pumps and doing what they need to do. And hey, it is an exciting day. I'm not blaming them. I'm not making fun, you know, but it is an exciting day because we got something to talk about here, you know, but there is a reality when we break this down. I mean, we look to the United States. You're part of the Commonwealth. I'm part of the Commonwealth. We look to the United States as leaders in this subject on where we are going and where it's going to take us in the future. From the UK perspective, how does this report look?
Well, quite frankly, we're jealous across here, this side of the Atlantic, because we don't have this kind of reporting. We don't have this kind of openness. So, you know, anything that comes along like this that we look at and we think, wish we could do this as well. Wish the Ministry of Defence in London would actually come out with this kind of report rather than just the, oh, there's nothing to see here, move on mantra that they've adopted for the last 30, 40, 50 years. I'm a bit in two minds about this report, though, because, yes, you mentioned about the explosion on UFO Twitter. I went to bed for 6 hours last night because it's 5:15 in the morning here in the UK. And when I woke up, you know, Twitter was awash with comments, good and bad. So I guess it depends on which side of the fence you fall as to how cynical you are or how sort of accommodating you are about the whole thing as to what you'll take from it. So, but there are positives and negatives like everything else. And I'm sure we're going to discuss this as we go on.
Cristina, you're part of the younger generation here that kind of, you know, I want to bring in because I really trust your opinion on, you know, me being an old dude here coming up on 50, and I need to be able to figure out what that young generation is looking at when it comes to this. Are you viewing this any differently? Are you viewing this as just a nothing burger, or are you looking at this as something where, hey, it is a step closer, let's try and be positive?
I wasn't expecting anything earth-shattering or any revelations, but I definitely was expecting more than an 8.5 pages of text, and more of them are half pages and not including the index and the appendix after over 2 months of delays in releasing. Now, many people in the UFO community are again disappointed, while others, like you had mentioned, are seeing little pieces as diamonds. And then you have a percentage that says that what has been left unsaid speaks volumes, as Dan had mentioned. Now, I do believe the best is yet to come, not only in future reports, but also the analysis of the report of those intimately aware of how things work behind the scenes, and others with their fingers on the pulse on the intel community, such as Walter right here. So I think a big takeaway from me was that the report states that these unknowns are still making incursions into secure and controlled airspace. And I think that overall, while there was a lot of bureaucratic jargon, as Chris Mellon had mentioned in his article, we still finally got a report like we were promised to get. Was it late? Yes, absolutely. But let's say we were to speak to ourselves or people in the community 10 years back, stating, do you think the government would ever release anything? We would be laughed at. And yet here we are in 2023 actually having this conversation seriously, having an incredible panel, going into depth on these reports, and getting the reports that we were promised.
That is very true. That is very true. It is a little bit step by step, Nicole Sakach, as we bring you in here. You know, the idea that sometimes a little piece of cheese to feed a hunger is better than nothing. And maybe that's the way we should be looking at this report. Nicole, you're
lost everybody.
sorry, you were freezing up there for a moment.
I'd lost everybody. Am I back now? Or you guys
Yes.
are back? But I was gonna say, I do think our expectations have been high, and we've wanted to see this snowball continue to grow as it's rolling down this mountain to disclosure. But I think when we're still talking about the statistics of what this report has put out, we have gotten more cases. I don't want us to forget that it still falls into our community standards that we've seen over decades and decades. And this, I think Don could speak to this as well. This is still giving us kind of an example of, after the investigations, after we look into this, we're still getting what I call that Hynek 5%. 5% is still unknown, and they can't explain it. No matter what their, 6 were attributed to clutter, 163 were characterized as balloon or balloon-like entities, which I thought was an interesting wordage used there. And then we did also have another interesting rephrase where they characterized 26 as unmanned aircraft systems. I hadn't seen that before, which I've been dealing with the Air Force a lot lately, and they will just relentlessly throw out drones, and not even foreign drones so much, but they're calling them
Bull, you froze up again there. You froze up a little bit there.
to see that the bulk of these cases and what's been reported in is still from the Navy and the U.S. Air Force. But then you haven't heard that there's follow-up. At least that's not what I'm getting from individuals, pilots in the Air Force that have reported. There's not a Office of Special Investigations They haven't heard from anybody specifically within Arrow. And that's disappointing to me. I thought this report would have a little more follow-up on the first report. And I didn't really see any more in depth into what they already have before them. To me, we've gotten a regurgitation of there's more and we're still getting organized. This person's going to do that. This person's, And so I don't want to call it a nothing burger. I think we should be proud that, this is still in the forefront and our community is pushing for this and we're actually being listened to. But I'm still not sure we're getting listened to in the ways we want. So.
All right, let's bring in Tim Seanor here for a minute here because we want to get your voice. Tim, you and I were talking about this earlier today. We talked about it on the UFO report last night as well. And, overall, we weren't sure when this report was going to come out. And then a little spy in our chat room last night, Jonathan Davies from the UK, states, expect the report tomorrow or the next day. And bang on, here it comes. Here we are with the UFO report. I mean, sometimes it just works that way. Were you expecting things to go down this way with the report, Tim?
Yeah, this actually delivered in every way I had expectations for, kind of including some of the mandates and requirements that we saw highlighted, because that's really what we got out of this. And again, I like to think of this as maybe the bare bones, the skeletons of what the classified report looked like. And so based on this, I can definitely make some considerations what the classified report potentially looked like. And so that's kind of gold to me. I know there's not a lot here, but again, I always see a positive at anything in this. I am relatively new to the topic, but at the same rate, the way I evaluate this is that they are talking about something that they've never talked about before. This is a second report on a topic that we're literally having to pry away from them. They don't want to release reports. They don't want to talk about the subject. And this, to me, is gold, the fact that they're actually talking about it. So I like to highlight the positive. And again, I brought away from this that there was 171 cases that are completely still unidentified in their opinion. And so to me, it's still massive.
And I think that's the way we should look at it. Don Schmidt, let's try and get you back in here because I think you have a very impressionable opinion here, and hopefully your audio holds out for us here. But your overall thoughts, Don, regarding the report. I mean, happy, disappointed, finally glad it's out?
Might be muted now.
Let me check here. Yeah, there we go. Okay, we got you. Well, let's try that again. We're just having some tech issues with Don. Don, let's try that again. Are you happy, unhappy, blasé about the report?
I think I'm losing audio.
We are having audio issues here. Don, unfortunately, none of us can hear what you were saying. We got about 5 minutes to go here before we go to break at the bottom of the hour. And it's an SOR special report on the UFO report that was released today. Cristina, I want to go back to you here for a second because, you have worked your sources about this topic for quite a while here. When was it going to come out? When it was going to break? Did you have any preconceived notions on what was going to happen today?
Absolutely not. I was in the dark like so many others in the community, and I was honestly shocked I was scrolling through Twitter and I saw the posts and I'm like, oh my gosh, love Twitter. they keep me up to date. So as soon as I saw it, I tried to digest it the best I could. In the first round, I'm like, with my mentality being a part of Gen Z, I'm reading it and I'm like, what did I just read? Like, what does this mean? But as I read it a few more times and took my time reading it, because that first time it was pure excitement, of course, right? But then after reading it a second and third time, I'm like, okay, now I understand what they're saying. And they're saying practically nothing in like several paragraphs.
How do you feel about that? What was missing for you? What did you want to see?
I think when it comes to this topic, when we're dealing with the Pentagon, once again, I expected nothing less. The way that they formulate their papers, they try to discourage people to not want to read it because it can be rather difficult if you're not familiar with the jargon or even the topic as a whole, which is the majority of people. And that's where we come in and fill in those gaps, having these conversations. But for myself, like so many others, either if you're interested in the topic or not, of course you want to hear the terms, it was extraterrestrials, we have found them, something like this, but at the same time, we're not going to be receiving that type of information on a silver spoon. And that's why so many people are disappointed, is because that's the information that they are expecting to get, and I don't think they're ever going to get that. And something that I've said for quite some time is disclosure is going to come from the people, not the government. However, it is fantastic that the government is getting involved publicly with these conversations. While we're not getting anything, 10 years back, this topic, this mentality that us getting information from them would have been laughed at, like, you're absolutely crazy, that would never happen. But we have proved ourselves wrong time and time again in these last few years since 2017.
That is very true. And what a lot of us, I think, have to remember, Walter Bosley, as I'm going to turn to you here, is we got about 2 minutes to go, is for all of us in this field, we're used to it. We want that next step. We want that next phase of information, like Cristina said. But for the mainstream public, they're still on baby steps. They're still putting together Duplo blocks while we're building, Star Wars action figures out of Lego. You know what I'm saying? How do we blend those two? Because I can see where the UFO community is upset, but I can also see where the general public is saying, holy cow, what is this going on here?
Well, a couple of things real quickly. It's up to those of us like us here who are more up to speed on things to bring the newbie folks up to speed. It's up to us to bring them up to more accurate speed. We can't leave them to go to these government reports. The other quick thing I'll say, because I know you got to go to break, is the one thing we in the community can take great pleasure in, because I've seen this from the inside. No government agency likes to be made to do these kinds of reports. Congress ordered this. I guarantee you they don't like having to do these. The fact that they even have to do them, even if they're not giving us anything, this grates on them, because they would rather not do this at all. Look how long they went without doing this kind of thing. So that's a small victory. That is a small victory. And just by forcing them to do it, we can take some victory in that for sure. But whether we'll get anything out of them, it all depends. And I agree with, not only do I think, disclosure is going to come from the people. Actually, I think disclosure is going to come from the ETs, whatever they are. I think when they decide they want to disclose themselves to the world, they're just going to do it. They're not going to care about what our governments and stuff say. And that's what I'd be looking for. I hope I live to see that.
I think we all hope to live to see that, as long as it's not like V, we'll all be okay, because I don't need some reptilian ripping off my face just because he thinks I'm chunky and look like a big candy bar. Don't need that, but nonetheless, panel, we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Spaced Out Radio special report tonight on the UFO Report. We are joined by Tim Seanor, Graeme Rendall, author and researcher Nicole Sakach from Fifth Pillar of Emphasis on TikTok, Dan Warren, Cristina Gomez, journalist, podcaster, researcher, Walter Bosley, researcher, and Roswell expert, Don Schmidt. We'll be right back. All right, we are clear for our radio audience. YouTube can still hear us. And Don, are we still struggling here, buddy? What I'm going to recommend, Don, is maybe turn your camera off so that way we can maybe just get audio. Maybe that'll work.
If that doesn't work, do we need to reboot and just start from scratch and try again?
Oh, can't do that, man. I've got this side.
Not you, Don.
Yeah, I've already got a snafu happening right here with Spreaker that I'm a little concerned about, but
But I'm thinking maybe Don needs to reboot his computer just to start.
I think he has a couple of times though. That's the problem.
What part of the country is he in? Because we got all that hell going on in the southeast. I just had family.
I'm thinking everyone fine. That's what I mean.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don, is there any way you can plug in? Is your computer hardlined in, or is it just on a Wi-Fi connection right now?
Okay, any better?
A little bit, yes.
Does anyone ever do podcasts via their smartphone? I feel like Stephen Greer does all his interviews over a smartphone instead of a computer. Maybe we can convert to that.
I was doing it for a year and a half, and nobody knew the difference. It was when the smartphones took that next leap, and it worked great. But then it just, after a while, didn't so much. But it's good in a pinch.
Yeah. It might be an improvement for Don based on the quality of his connection so far. All right, so where's everybody from? I'm in the southeast in Middle Tennessee.
You guys are all in places where there is no snow.
Southern California, less than an inch, man. They closed the schools.
We've got snow on the hills here, just about 20 miles up the valley from where I live, and in the middle of one of the Durham Dales, we've got snow. So
an uncharacteristic amount of rain in Southern California we've been having, but we're loving it.
I will tell you right now, when I need ice, I just go out on my patio and scoop up a glass of snow.
There you go.
And I'll tell you, if you ever want to try a good drink, Fireball and snow is very nice.
The videos that I think are so cool is like when it's super cold and they like fry an egg and it like freezes, or like they throw boiling water and that freezes midair. I find those videos like so wild. I love the snow, but not into that kind of snow.
I meant to do that a couple weeks ago when we were at minus 37 Fahrenheit, and I meant to go outside and do that. And I totally forgot about it because I'm just going to tell you, it was so freaking cold outside. You
just stayed in your bathtub. That's what you did.
I just stayed in my bathtub. That's right.
Dang,
so
I would have loved
outside
to
broadcasts
see that.
I talked to Dave twice today, and both times he was like, "I'm warming up in my bathtub. I'll call you back." I'm like, "What is wrong?"
That's right.
with you?
That is right.
It works.
Need a hot tub, not a bathtub, a hot tub.
You know what? It got so cold up here a few weeks ago that it actually turns diesel gas into gelatin.
Oh, jeez.
Are you serious?
Yeah. No, I'm dead serious. I'm not even playing with that. I didn't even know that could happen. I learned that this year.
So the ice truckers must have some additive they have to put in the fuel tank. Right?
No, they don't. You go usually from our area. If you're working outside or in your vehicle, you never stop your vehicle, even when you're filling it up. You never stop it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
that'll do.
That's why you never buy an Alberta or an oil patch vehicle from Canada, because it may only have like 50,000 miles on it, but the engine's got about 150,000 miles on it.
Oh.
Good to know.
I saw on TikTok a guy who hollows out big tree stumps, lines them, and then turns those into hot tubs. It's pretty cool, like redwood tree stumps, you know. And
That's
it was
exciting.
pretty cool, yeah.
Talking about TikTok, Dan, I love your content. Waiting for the report. I was watching them and I'm like, come on, when are we gonna get the report? But they were so unique and so comical. And I love how you got your family involved too. They were really well done.
Yeah, the TikTok audience didn't like them as much as the Twitter universe did. Like UFO Twitter ate those things up, man.
Hold
like
on,
that
guys.
that was a little too
Hold on.
inside baseball.
Totally
Here we go,
get you.
guys. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio special report tonight is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. The UFO report dropped today, and we have a special panel tonight. Graeme Rendall from the United Kingdom. He's an author and researcher Nicole Sakach, journalist, podcaster, researcher, Cristina Gomez, researcher and investigator, former government alphabet agent, Walter Bosley. From TikTok fame, Dan Warren is here, and from the UFO report, our resident Timbit, little Timmy Seanor, who's got the report. Don Schmidt is having some audio. I'm not sure if he is going to be back. Nicole, maybe you could update us on that, or if he's rebooting his computer.
I'll try.
All right. I would appreciate that, because we're trying to get Don Schmidt in here. Let's start with you on this one, Tim. Right before the break, we were asking what was missing for you, okay, in that report. I mean, there's a lot there that we can shine on, but there's a lot missing as well. How about for you, Tim?
Yeah, so what screamed missing was what they planned to do as far as delivering to the public. There was nothing about that I could gather. I've scanned it a few times. I think I've, done what I can to see anything there. And I couldn't see anything about how they expect to deliver any information to the public. I've heard some stuff behind the scenes on theory, but have any of you guys got any insight as to if that's even in any of the words here? No.
They do talk about involving the Undersecretary of Defense of Public Affairs to help, I think it said, mainstream some communications. I don't know if, to me, that would start with their Twitter account that they need to start being more active on. They've only tweeted twice since its creation over 6 months ago. So they're not doing a good job being transparent and communicating openly at present. So hopefully that is something that they'll get better at as time goes on. But if the Department of Defense gets more involved, I got a feeling they're going to be less willing to communicate to us. So if it was just Arrow, I think we'd get more communication from them. But once it starts going through multiple layers of bureaucracy, I think it gets more difficult, which is, I think, one of the things that it has caused us to have a lot of things missing from this report. Is it was probably passed around to different departments and everybody took something out of it that they didn't want in it. And it resulted in a pretty skeletal report, in my opinion. But I do like to think that this effort, since it is the first report that Arrow has put together, is the skinny end of the wedge that is going to hopefully get us some more information to come out. We need to do our part, of course, but they need to do their part as well. They do report to the American citizens, so they do need to be cooperative with us and communicate with us. And it's not just an American issue, it's a global issue. They're the forefront of this issue, and this is their time to make history. This is their time to be written in the history books forever and ever. And we'll see if Kirkpatrick is a name that goes down in history.
Could I just quickly, could I quickly follow up then with the word for word out of the report, how it is saying here that there will be comprehensive manner for the IC to work, and in particular, NIM or NIM aviation will remain the IC's focal point for UAP issues, while Aero is the DoD focal point for these issues related to activities. How did you understand that to mean? I don't see anything here. Now, this was where I was looking to about exactly what you were talking about. How did you understand that to mean that they're dividing this? And are we only going to be delivered through Aero? Any information?
I wasn't speaking on that part in particular, but that is an interesting point because it does sound like they are going to start trying to slice this in half in one group, which, if you don't know, the NIM aviation group was the one that put out the logo that had the UFO on it and then retracted it as soon as UFO Twitter found out about it a few months ago. So they're involved, but they're going to be the representative that communicates with the intelligence community, is the way that I was reading that. They're going to be the point man for all things intelligence community, and Aero is going to be the primary point of contact for all things DoD. Those two organizations are going to start to work together to create these reports, which when you do look in the report that just came out, they do say that the quarterly reports to policymakers contain greater detail of UAP events than this report did. So they're working together to get valuable information distributed on a quarterly basis to the policymakers, the congressmen, that we're not going to see, unfortunately. That doesn't have a public-facing element to it.
Right.
So we're going to be stuck with the annual reports that get watered down.
Graeme, Rendall, I want to bring you in here because one of the things that I've noticed in this report is how there's a lot more of what is going on behind the scenes. It seems like a lot of this is going to stay in the dark from the public. You know, when they announced, that there was an increase in reports and sightings, I thought that was very healthy, but they weren't telling us what those anomalous ones were. They seemed to dodge those to tell us more about balloons and drones, etc. What's your thoughts on that?
As a historian, I'm sort of reminded of what the summary of Blue Book's status report number 14 from May 1955 said. And if people have ever read it, it's a similar kind of thing where they're trying to push the fact that, oh yes, we've identified all these reports and there's only a small amount that need to be identified. And what they're not saying here is that actually 143 cases from the first preliminary report, they're not being addressed. So if you add those to the 171 that they can't explain at the moment, that's a quite significant proportion of the 510 cases. So there's actually quite a lot of information they're not telling people. And buried away in there is the detail, but we're not getting the detail. Effectively, it's like we're being given a jigsaw with half the pieces missing and not even the cover of the box, so we even know what we're trying to put together. So we're trying to explain or trying to make sense of something where we simply don't have much of the information bar what's in this summary. The Blue Book report from 55, all that was released was a press release and the summary. So we've got a similar situation, is where we're trying to make sense of incomplete information. We're not going to get that detail because it's in the classified section. Yeah. So we're basically reduced to just trying to pick out words and phrases from an executive summary, which is effectively just management reporting. I've seen things like this in our National Health Service in the UK, where they're trying to gloss over inconvenient facts and trying to manipulate figures and tell a story which may not be the one where everybody wants to hear, or it's the one that they want to push. So it just, I've seen this before, but also you have to wonder, this is a 2-month delayed report. So what have they taken out of it? Why is it taking 2 months to come out with this? As Cristina says, it's 7 pages in total, of which a lot of it's like just white space, and therefore they could have probably cut it down to 3 or 4, maybe 5 pages total. Sean Kirkpatrick, his presentation to the Transportation Research Board yesterday, that was the one that you didn't know the name of earlier. I think it was Tim, I think, mentioned it, or Dan mentioned it. I can't remember who. That had a lot more detail in it in terms of what they were doing and what they were trying to achieve. So people should maybe have a look to try and find the slides for that, because they're really interesting, and it actually mentions the possible recovery as well of UAP. So there's some interesting little details in there. But as for this report, no, we're not expecting anything more than is there. There's just a lot of words which don't really say a huge amount. And it seems like, to me, it's almost as if they've been pushed to actually get it out for a second deadline. And this is the best they've been able to come up with in a very short space of time. That might be me just just talking off the top of my head, but that's what it looks like to me, having seen similar things like that to management structures in the UK. Yeah, it's all very frustrating. But then again, that's what we have to contend with on a day-to-day business basis. So I wasn't expecting much else than that.
All right, Walter Bosley, I mean, there was a lack of excitement about this. Cristina said it very well right off the bat, where, the pages are almost 12 pages, but, the report in reality is maybe 4.5, and it doesn't give a lot of gems in there outside of the numbers going up on the military side. I mean, at what point does the government have to stop looking at just military encounters or FAA encounters? When do they need to start expanding this to get any true sort of statistic?
I think they are looking at all encounters, and they have been all along, in spite of what they've told us over the decades, in spite of what people conclude. Of course, they're looking at encounters that would even include the ones we're hoping to find out about, extraterrestrials. Of course, they're looking at that stuff, but at least in the United States, I can't speak for the UK and other places, but at least in the United States, the issue is, yes, over the years, the public has become more interested in the subject of this, but in the US, they've got to become more engaged in it to get the government to push the DOD to reveal anything substantial. And when it's just the way our government works, when they think the people are when it becomes one of those things where it quite frankly is in the top 5 of issues in an election, that's when they pay attention to it. And that's when they start telling government agencies, okay, you need to open up and talk about this. Because, hey, let's face it, even the CIA was forced to come clean on MK Ultra in 1973, if we recall, with the Church Committee, because there were some things going on that caught the attention of, people, and it caused enough of an issue that, even that had to come clean to a degree. But yeah, that's what it is. And the DOD, I don't think they feel any pressure to really give us anything, because I don't think they're getting any pressure to give us anything, because again, our community, we're engaged, but the general public in the United States has to really be engaged with this for them to care about, making sure these things are substantial. In my opinion, that's, the way I see the DOD on that.
All right, well, let's get Nicole. Oh, go ahead, Cristina. Sorry.
One thing that we are seeing, Walter, is that more congressmen are getting interested. For instance, in the congressional hearing back in May, we had Gallagher asked some really tough questions, which we talked here on SOR when that was released. He was interested. Then we have Congressman Tim Burchett, who has showed some real interest in the conversation. And today he posted on Twitter in regards to the UAP report that, quote, yes, it's a cover-up. Now, from my understanding from that very short sentence, it goes to show that there must be more that he knows that he simply can't talk about. He read the report and he was rather disappointed like the rest of us. But it is because of people like himself and others that are in a position of power that can also influence the conversation as well. But I totally agree with you. We, the people, need to get more involved. We need to inspire more people.
Yeah.
No matter
big numbers.
Exactly. Big numbers is what's most important. So I am with you on that, but I am seeing some progress in regards to congressmen.
If we can get about 25 senators, or 25 to 50 senators, getting upwards to where half of our Congress is saying our constituents are demanding to know this, that's going to get the attention of the people who can pressure the DOD to give us something. And so it is the right track, but we just need to expand.
I think the people that are going to have the most influence are those members of the Senate that are on the appropriations committees. Once you start grabbing and jiggling and pulling on the purse strings,
The money.
you're going to get their attention
Oh, yeah.
really quick.
Yeah,
And
true.
we do have some members that are wearing multiple hats on multiple committees
Mhm.
that do have influence on the appropriations committee. And so those are the people that I hope that our community starts to figure out who they are, because it's easy to find out who they are. I can't rattle them off from my shoot from the hip. But
Well,
if we
also
can-
the purse strings, but also if a congressman thinks that he or she's not going to get reelected and it has something to do with this issue, you'll see that congressman suddenly get real engaged with pressing on it. So that's another thing.
It's easy publicity too. Any politician that talks about the UFO subject on Twitter, that is their most liked, shared, retweeted comments that
That's
they'll
right.
make all year long. That's our power as a social media platform. We can use that to our advantage, and that's what we need the listeners to do. Get engaged on UFO Twitter. Keep an eye out for politicians that are saying things positive about the UAP investigation, and support them and say thank you and be polite.
Yeah.
Nicole Sakach, let's hear from you on this. You know, I mean, we need engagement. We need people to start taking this seriously. You know, we know that our field loves this. We know our field is going to shred this report apart, every word. And I'm not saying that to be negative, but we are literally going to break down every word to make sure if there's even one space or the old fashioned two spaces after a period. You know, I mean, that's how critical we're going to be. I mean, for you, Nicole, what is missing in this? Where did you feel this report fell short, as well as where it gained progress?
I think where it fell short was where they were listing all the 3-letter agencies and all of our branches of military. Where it fell short for me was Space Force was missing. It wasn't listed in this at all,
Yeah.
which was kind of astounding to me. I mean, they're our guardians, right? Like, they're controlling all the satellites and protecting the world. Like, to me, in my mind, they already have all this sensor capability that this report talks about collecting and utilizing and centralizing.
Mhm.
Isn't it already centralized in Space Force? Maybe I'm looking at that a little wrong. I want to also point out maybe what I liked most was, especially over this last year, we've seen Ryan Graves really championing our cause here in terms of flight safety, which, if you know the history of this disclosure movement, you know, flight safety has been like the attack stance from back in the Greer and the citizens disclosure movement. They knew they could get people's attention, and Mellon has said this, and Elizondo has said this as well. They knew they had a niche with that people would pay attention and listen to them. And Leslie Keene, I think, started this 20 years ago, plus 20 years ago now. She really started pushing this in the things that she wrote, the people that she approached and spoke with. So I did like how they addressed flight safety concerns, taking this seriously, but then they went that little extra step by saying, you know, there's never been in-air collisions, you know. And then I also liked in that paragraph where they included the health implications. And this is kind of a hot topic for a lot of conversations that Grant Cameron and I have with experiencers. We want to know if this phenomenon has interacted with you in a positive way or a negative way. Orbs come up, you know, a lot as being dangerous or harmful or healing. And of course, with the work that we all know Gary Nolan has been putting into our community. And for them to come out and say at this time that they cannot directly link any health concerns to interactions with UFO or UAP was kind of shocking to me, but I guess I'm 50-50 on this. I know and believe in cases where people have been harmed, or maybe there's possible health related issues because of their experience. But then I'm on the other side of the coin where I hear about so many cases of healing. And I was surprised that they gave us that little snippet. And then I was excited because I am kind of on the side of the fence where I truly don't think these are threatening in a threat narrative where we all need to be on high alert for an invasion or, ET or people eaters or whatever your bad scenario is. So yeah, that was probably my disappointment with Space Force, and my excitement was how they addressed the flight safety and health concerns.
Real quick on the Space Force thing, if you look at the footnote on page 3 of the report, it does say that this report, or the fiscal year 2022 NDA, expands the definition of UAP to include air, sea, and transmedium objects. And this report maintains that nomenclature during the transition phase and stand up of Aero. So they don't even include spaceborne objects in this report. But in the presentation that Kirkpatrick gave to Congress yesterday, or to whatever that committee was, they do use the new term, and they do include information about space in it. So I think there's a delineation between the two.
Right. And I will say, I know this wording is always a source of contention. Like, I think it was over the last year, maybe year and a half, we have heard about pushback from the Air Force. It's like, oh, we don't have to report stuff from space because, space is not atmosphere. Like just little verbiage like that or wordage like that that prompted them to change it from unidentified aerial phenomenon to anomalous, which, a late report can't even give the most updated acronym or wording for this. That annoyed me. It truly did.
That's typical Air Force.
Well, we've seen it in more than just that, though. Like I pointed out a few minutes ago, we've heard unmanned aircraft systems.
Mm-hmm.
That's a phrase that's been used for quite a while now when they talk about drones, certainly in the UK, where they talk about air proxies, which are, where aircraft and objects come in close proximity to each other, like near misses, I suppose you would call them. And they use the phrase UAS, and they have used that for quite a while. So it's nothing new in terms of what I've heard. But yeah, you're right. In this type of terminology and this kind of report, it is a new one rather than just drone. One of the things I was thinking was, sorry, you got.
I was going to say, I guess it's just more inconsistent use of these phrases, so they talk about like streamlining their reporting, and we all know they backed off their latest acronym, whatever they were going to change Aero to. And then they were like, oh, never mind. We'll leave it as Aero. That's good. It's like, I wish they would stick to UFO, UAP. Now we got transmedium vehicles for a while. We had USO. What's another one?
This is like another preliminary report, though, isn't it? Really, because it's Arrow's first report, whereas the previous one was the UAP Task Force's preliminary report. So I suppose if you're going to be charitable, you're going to cut them a little bit of slack because they're in a settling down period, if you like. Yes, okay, I can be charitable at 6 o'clock in the morning, but it's that's what they're doing. The thing I thought was also missed out was they were talking about the increased number of reports from the Air Force and the US Navy, but they didn't give a breakdown. So, as far as I'm concerned, an increased number of reports from the Air Force could be 3 reports because they were dragging their heels. Chris Mellon said that that they were dragging their heels. A few other people have said that they're the ones who are there was probably pushback from. So you just have to wonder how engaged are the US Air Force in this, because they've got a tradition of being really against this kind of thing, haven't they?
Yeah, their U.S. Air Force engagement, I guarantee you, is deep and very much hands-on. But like Nicole was saying about the terms, when it comes to the U.S. government, particularly DoD, it's either a very clever game they're playing to confuse us, or it's a bureaucratic cluster that they can't be on the same page yet.
Walter, I'm going to get you to hold on right there, because we are going to go to break here at the top of the hour. 1 hour down, 2 hours to go. The special report, as the UFO report has finally landed. At least something's landed regarding this subject on Earth. even if it is in Washington, D.C. We got a great panel that will return right after this. Stay tuned. Great job,
right back.
guys.
Okay,
Just
Dave.
remember,
So,
our YouTube audience can hear us. Yes.
so is the pattern always at the 30-minute mark exactly? That's when you have to go to commercial, or like when it's live streaming like this, or how does it work for you?
29 and 59.
29 and 59. Okay.
29 and 59. That's why when I start doing the circles, Cristina is all of a sudden like, oh, I've learned that. That's time to shut up. That's a broadcasting. You know that, Cristina. All of a sudden you're DJ in the booth.
Yeah.
I
do.
I first saw you do that, Dave. I thought you were doing like a whoopity-doo.
Yes.
Condescending.
Oh, yeah.
I
Oh,
have
yeah.
a message from Don, if you'd like me to read it. He tried rebooting his system, and he said what normally reboots in a minute took over 3, and his whole system is moving like molasses. But he would like,
that's terrible.
I can read a statement for him though.
Yeah,
Maybe
read it to the audience. I'll be right back.
He says, historically, the Pentagon is playing the exact same shell game as it has since 1948. The very fact that the Navy and the Air Force continue to only look at the mundane and use the very same excuses as Project Blue Book, that if only we had more data, they could explain all the reports. Of the 366 case reports, why were there more than half that were described as unremarkable characteristics? Why would such reports even be included? Another 163 were balloons. Pilots are still misidentifying balloons? Question? Unbelievable. It's interesting that they are now considering the health implications after a sighting. And I cannot emphasize enough, until a sufficient number of whistleblowers step forward and are taken seriously, the Pentagon, as it has for the past 75 years, will have the final say. Don Schmidt. So I agree with a lot of that, which is, I was hoping Don's audio cleared up, because this is kind of what Don and I talk behind the scenes all the time when we do chat. It's kind of like, take me back to 1947 in Roswell, or take me back to, Hynek coming out of the Condon report and then going on to form CUFOS after he was so pissed off about the Condon report. Don was in with Dr. Hynek in those days. Like, that's where Don started his ufology career, was working with Dr. Hynek. And I love that fact. And, to me, there's no better touchstone than taking it back, to the 80s and to the 90s and, 2000s and to now. Like, there is a lot of repeat scenarios going on now. And Graeme, you brought up Project Blue Book, and I wanted to jump in and just say that it's so frustrating that they're talking, right now they're talking about, oh, we need to gather this data, we need better reporting, we need all this. Well, what did they do with Blue Book? I mean, they had 2 guys, maybe 4, I forget how many was the official team, but they were sending Hynek all over the country to investigate civilian reports as well as military reports. So that's what's frustrating to me is, 40
Well, they didn't
years
just
ago,
have 2 people, did they? They had the whole of the 4602nd AISS, all their staff collecting
right.
intelligence reports as well and feeding them through to Blue Book. But the actual Status Report 14, they had a panel of evaluators who looked at all the cases, and they threw a lot out. Because there were, they thought there were possible balloons or suspected balloons. So the terminology was great, and it was on the most kind of spurious of handles to label these as as balloons. Gorman's report from 1st of October 48 of he was flying a Mustang and he was chasing this light around the skies above Fargo in North Dakota, and they said, oh, it's a balloon, but the balloons were painted black. You wouldn't have seen one at that time of night. But oh yes, it's a balloon. So if you're going to have that kind of label attached to cases, no wonder they can come out with the figures to say, oh, well, all these are known and you've only got a small number of unknowns. But even this time round, as people said before, they've basically glossed over the previous 143 unknown cases or unidentified cases. So what's happening to those? Are they just being shelved because they're overworked? Are they getting so many cases now that they can't devote enough time to actually try and categorize them? So what's happening to the previous ones? Is the next report going to just be a progress report saying, oh yes, we've got another how many X number of 100 cases, of which so many are identified as balloons, etc., clutter, all this kind of thing, and then we've got a lump which aren't. But then are they going to forget about this one as well, and there's 171, and just forget gloss over that again? It's
Graeme, a request for you on the screen there.
Not bloody likely.
Perfect. I'll get you guys to hold on. Thank you to our super chatters: Pam, Neuro, Deco, and Deb ×2, Enki, Lavira, Monica, Area 51 ×2, Catfish ×2, and Vaughn and Walker. Thank you so much for the love. Don't forget, guys, read the byline below, the ticker there. We want to see you all in Vegas, May 19th through 21st for our fan party. Here we go.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter @Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, including brand new Channel X94 in Vernal, Utah, and, of course, on our digital side on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Dedans is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter @Spaced Out Radio, Instagram @Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok @Spaced Out Radio. Let's continue on with our panel tonight. Dan Warren from Fifth Pillar of Emphasis. He's got over 300,000 subscribers on TikTok. Journalist, podcaster, researcher Cristina Gomez, researcher and author Graeme Rendall, researcher, former government agent Walter Bosley, Tim Seanor from our UFO Report, and Nicole Sakach, researcher and author. We had to say goodbye to Don Schmidt just due to technical issues, so we do apologize that Don was having some difficulty tonight. I know he really, really wanted to be here for this one. Graeme, I'm going to start with you on this one because Mr. McCormick made a very interesting statement that right at the end, he kind of slipped in the word retrievals. And you know what? This is an important statement because we're all wondering if the government of the United States actually has crash retrievals of unidentified flying objects. And you're the one who brought it to my attention, and I wanted to start with you on this.
That's a $64,000 question, isn't it? Do they have craft? Do they have pieces of craft? And that's the one that has kind of brought this whole thing to the public narrative through Roswell and the implications. But I have difficulty trying to actually fit the Roswell of the story into everything else that's happened through documentation from Project Sign, Project Grudge, Project Blue Book. So I'm a bit of a loss to explain how it all sort of like fits together. However, yeah, if they do have stuff, then we need to know, but are we going to know? Because that's going to be something that is going to be heavily classified, and you're never going to get it in a public, kind of release like this. that's going to be something that's going to be, it's kind of have to be forced out of them somehow by something landing on the White House lawn or something like that. It's going to have to tip that hand. So unless anything comes along to change that, we're never going to get those details. They're going to be so heavily compartmentalized that they'll never see the light of day.
Tim, let's get your thoughts. I mean, having McCormick sit there and state that there could be retrievals out there somewhere, whether it's Area 51, whether it's Dulce or Wright-Patterson or wherever they could be hiding this. I mean, is this going to become part of a future conversation in your eyes?
Well, absolutely. And I think it has to. At this point, there are so many of these big questions just lingering out there. At some point, they're going to they have to answer for them. And so I do like a lot of the wordage that we are seeing that's coming through in this report in kind of support of looking for these things. And I know we're even looking into having a church committee look into some history and dig out some of the problems that we may have had in the past covering things up. And so do I think that we're going to get more on it? Yes, because their feet are being held to the fire. And really, we know from history, that's the only way that we're going to get the honest truth on anything from this.
All right. Well, one of the things that I'm wondering about is, did we gain anything that we didn't know in this report, Dan? I mean, the retrieval thing, to me, there's always been rumor. This gives it a little bit more credence for me. The act or the fact that they mentioned that reports are starting to go up. They're not trending down. They're not staying stagnant. Reports are going up. I mean, I look at those as positives in moving the confirmation ball forward, because I still don't believe we're in a disclosure movement. I do believe we are in confirmation. But are we moving the ball forward here? Are we getting into those more risque topics?
With this report, I don't think so. I'm not going to call this report a nothing burger. I would refer to it as a copy and paste burger, because it seems like 75% of the contents of this report were copied directly out of the NDAA or copied out of previously published documents. I feel like most of UFO Twitter would have been able to write the majority of this document word for word just by copying and pasting sections of other documents. So there's not a lot of new in here, in my opinion. And one of the things that I found funny is the stress that they put on teaching us mathematics, the simple addition, and going over the numbers of the reports multiple times and explaining them. It was like they were trying to get to a certain number of words per page, so they were drawing it out as long as they could. It just was comical almost that they kept, and they've revisited it multiple times, which I found funny. But something else that I think is that they're hiding from this in this report is they do talk about a lack of any evidence of health-related effects associated with the UAP phenomena. Well, I think that's accurate as far as 2004 on. Once we go back in time, because the NDAA of 2023 is going to make us go back to 1945, they're going to have to talk about John Burroughs and his lawsuit against the government, where he got compensated for injuries that he received from being exposed to the Rendlesham UFO back in 1979 or 1980 on Christmas Day. So there's some things that are in this report that are not going to be able to be said once they go back and do a thorough review of the history of this phenomena within their own records, or else we're going to be able to turn around and say, no, you are lying to us. Here's where you said this was a health-related effect from a UAP on one of your service members. So now you're going to have to bring that discussion back up and share more information with us, hopefully.
I think they'll be it'll be difficult for people to prove a link. However, I mean, it'll be circumstantial. If you go back to the Cash Landrum incident from, was it 1980,
Right.
the U.S. Air Force basically denied any involvement in that because they said that whatever that craft was wasn't theirs. That's the upshot of it anyway. They denied knowledge of it. So trying to prove a link is difficult. Yes, there'll be information that comes out possibly about potential, kind of, as far as we're concerned, links. But trying to prove it is a different thing entirely. So it'll be one of those unanswered questions, won't it? And they can probably quite easily say, look, there's no proven link, but potential links, that's something different.
But there was a proven enough link to award him compensation for his injuries. So it was presented in a court of law. So there's something there.
That was
I
a
want to get
battle. Yeah, that was 1980, and Cash Landrum was 1980 as well. And if I'm remembering Cash Landrum correctly, the ladies got treatment for X amount of time, and then they were denied treatment shortly following. So, based on they couldn't prove that it was government related and, that sort of thing. So there's always that back and forth. I think one of the things that's questioned with Rendlesham as well is that with so many people involved, why didn't other people have adverse health effects? Halt didn't report any. Peniston hasn't reported any of the others that were along, with going into the forest. They didn't report anything. So
I could be wrong, but I thought he actually touched it. I could be off, but I thought.
Yeah, that was my understanding. Is that Burroughs was the closest to it, right?
I think the discrepancy is one thing that Grant and I talked to John Burroughs about, and I've spoken with Jim Peniston several times. Burroughs didn't touch the craft, but he was around it more than Jim. He had 2 sightings. He saw it and went back. They got their team and they went back out. And then another source of controversy is Burroughs had a weapon on him and possibly drew his weapon and aimed it at the craft. So was that like intent, taken as a threat from Burroughs and not Peniston? Because Peniston whipped out a notebook and started taking notes, walking around the craft, assessing the situation. Doesn't really seem, malicious, but I don't know. It's up for debate.
The least unintimidating gesture that you can make is whipping out a notebook and taking notes.
Ooh, I will like to point out, I did see on Twitter, people were bringing up Gary Nolan's set of data that he had, and they were questioning, if he's looking at this source of data and has drawn these conclusions, that there are health risks involved or health repercussions, why doesn't Arrow or ODNI, do they not have the same data as Gary Nolan? Is that, why is there a discrepancy there? So, or is
I think he said he was visited by the CIA. Am I correct in thinking that he was approached by someone from the CIA to look at those things? So that could be another stovepiping issue associated with the intelligence community versus the Department of Defense. Just a guess.
I want to get Cristina Gomez in here because we only have her until the bottom of the hour here before she has to say goodnight to us. Cristina, overall, we look to the government for answers. We look to the government to kind of lead the way. And in this report, as Dan said, it seems really cut and paste that all of us in ufology could have chipped in a word or two and written this together. At some point, as you mentioned earlier, that more and more senators and Congress people are getting involved with this. At some point, do we see a break in the conversation where we are going to see more public reports come out? Because I think that's what the people want. They want to know who these whistleblowers are. They want to know what are these reports that are not or considered unknown. What's happened in those situations? Do you think we're going to get some transparency?
So I look at this in a way for me to be able to talk to people my age, whether in the university or old school friends or even on my YouTube channel, armed with some kind of validation via these reports, looking for the points in the first and the second report to inspire curiosity in the minds of others and then get them to ask questions. Look, the more we can get the conversation going with new minds, the better. So with the public, they don't know anything if you really think about it. So all the gems that we have are very bright and shiny to them, especially these conversations that we have where we do a nice thorough rundown of these papers that are filled with jargon that people just don't understand unless you're a part of the community such as ourselves. So the more people that we get involved, the more young minds that we inspire, that is my purpose to having these conversations. And I think that overall, while once again, this report was disappointing to many, at least we got something that we were promised, and it's being taken seriously.
And I agree with you on that. But at some point, we all have to stand up and say to our Congress people, it's different for me because I'm in Canada, or Graeme in the UK, but we're hoping that people start writing letters to their Congress people or their senators and say, look, as a taxpayer of this great country that we call the United States, I want to know, why is this being hidden from me? Why is everything behind a closed door? Whether it's my fellow U.S. citizens who are considered now whistleblowers of this subject, or whether it's reports that are discovered by our military that is taxpayer funded. I mean, at some point, that pressure has to start. Maybe it starts in the mainstream media. Maybe it doesn't. Walter, you were shaking your head there up and down with a big yes there.
Well, when you're talking about the taxpayers, you're right. The taxpayers, need to. The more engagement here in the U.S. that our government, our Congress sees in the population, the more this is going to, raise up on their radar. And I think it's very important. It has got to become we've got to aim for this, the whole UFO disclosure thing, to become among the top 5 of the issues in every election: economy, defense, blah, 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 so forth. UFO truth, what's going on out there. Really, if we can elevate it to that here in the United States, then I think we'll really begin to see some results like we want to. But until then, they're just gonna. What I like about what Cristina said is she's right about the younger generation, because as us graybeards age out, if we're not bringing up the younger generations, it's a time game. They'll just let us age out, and then it'll pass. And if no one new is bringing the torch, they say, "Oh, gee, okay, we dodged that bullet. We don't have to worry about this anymore." But if generation after generation, up and down the age spectrum, they know there's going to be, these generations just marching at them for it, then. We will get somebody, whoever they, whether it's the Air Force or whoever, somebody is going to have to answer to it if it becomes that much of a hot button politically.
And we are aware that this conversation interests the general public. If we look at presidential candidates over the decades, a lot of them stated, if I'm president, I will disclose the UFO information that has been hidden from our government. We have seen it every 4 years by some other candidate. And it goes to show that there is some importance in these conversations. Now, a bill was just released, signed by President Biden. Out of the $800 billion budget, a sliver of our tax dollars is going to the research of UAP and to protect whistleblowers during a UAP congressional hearing, which is fantastic news. Now, how much money is going to that? Probably a teeny weeny itsy bitsy amount. But the fact that was even written in the bill is incredibly significant. So we are making those strides. People are becoming more interested. People are pushing for that transparency. But for us in the community, it's not as fast as we want it. But if we look once again, 10, 20 years ago, we've come a really long way.
What about you're talking about getting politicians engaged, but also to do that from the majority of the general public, you'll need the media to play a part as well. And I'm just wondering what kind of reaction they have in the States about the report, if any. The only headlines I've really seen overnight are that it's either around half or about half of sightings can be explained. I noticed in the Guardian in the UK this morning there was a story about talking about the focus maybe being on foreign adversary spying capabilities, which I'm not quite sure that's the top line of the actual document. So how are they reporting it in the States on the big news channels?
Well, mainstream media will barely touch it, but now things have changed. We are the media. Social media has become more significant than your mainstream outlets. And I mean, especially for my age group, everything is online, and they're not looking for their information at your mainstream outlets. They're looking at it, unfortunately, sometimes from their peers or from these more influential characters. Now, that, of course, can be a little dangerous with disinformation, but the same goes for any mainstream outlet as well. So, when we educate our peers, our groups in our generation, it can help them flush through all of that information. But as for the mainstream media, they've barely touched it, and I don't expect them to do a deep dive onto it because it's not a really an interesting report. It's not going to get so many hits, and that's what they're aiming for. They're aiming for the views to make them income, not the actual information that's provided.
So I think the best thing to ever happen to the UFO topic is drones. It's annoying for us, but man, if we didn't have drones, we wouldn't have the emphasis put on this topic like we do now from Congress. That's one thing that Chris Mellon pointed out, is in the process of trying to learn more about UAPs, we've improved our abilities as a nation, as a defense department, to identify foreign adversarial drones in our airspaces. That is what I hope the media picks up on, that they say, hey, this UFO report that's floating around, you need to know that this is also bringing to light a weakness that we have in our system that is going to be rectified because of this. And we need to continue to push on it for that reason, if not for that reason alone, if nothing else.
There was a member of the United States Air Force, we got about 3 minutes, who was interviewed earlier today, and I apologize, I forget his name, and he stood at the podium and was asked about the threat narrative, and he continued on the threat aspect of everything, even though he was admitting that there has not been a single incursion where an aircraft of the military or in any aircraft in American airspace has been threatened by any of these craft, Ryder it was,
Yep.
okay, by these UFOs. And I found that very interesting, that, you know, the threat narrative continues to be live and well, that they are sitting there, Cristina, talking about this, but they can't give a single example of where an F-18 or an F-15 or a C-5 Galaxy or anything has been, come close to collisions or been run out of their airspace by these UFOs.
If there wasn't the threat narrative, there would be no fire under the congressmen and the military's butts, okay? Because when we're looking at it from this perspective, then they can go ahead and push through the research stating that they are attempting to protect our nation. Now, if they were to state that, no, everything is fine, everything is great, they're not here to hurt us, which may be the case, then what's the point of doing the research? Now, someone somewhere has full reports concerning at least the Tic Tac craft. And I mean, you had the nation's most powerful Navy fleet encountering these things. And we've been told on a daily basis on the East and West Coast. So these things have been seen consistently. So you think that they were just ignored, right? Well, no, jets were scrambled, a few of which that we've heard about. But I just wonder how many times jets were scrambled, and are they still being scrambled today? I mean, maybe these Tic Tacs only operate over the water or under the water, because I haven't seen any reports of 40-foot Tic Tac objects over land. So I'm wondering what investigations are going on into these things.
Me too. Walter?
Well, you know my position. I think the Tic Tac, from all along, I've thought it was, advanced technology being developed in fighter squadron pilots, no matter how high level their clearance is or whatever their rank is, they're not going to be briefed in on everything being tested, particularly in that area where that happened out here in California is well known to be a testing area. So there's going to be a lot of this that is going to be advanced technology that's being tested, but not all of it is going to be that. As far as the threat narrative, I think that it's only logical that we are someday going to encounter an intelligent threat from space. This idea, this notion that because something Werner von Braun allegedly said on his deathbed or whatever, that we're never going to encounter a dangerous civilization out in space, I just don't find that to be realistic. But
And
as far
on
as
that
these,
note, I'm going to cut.
yeah.
I'm going to cut you off right there because
Sure.
we have to get going at our break here at the bottom of the hour. Cristina Gomez, we are going to say goodnight to you. Thank you so much for joining us, Cristina. The rest of the panel: Tim Seanor, Graeme Rendall, Dan Warren, Nicole Sakach, and Walter Bosley will continue right after this. Stay tuned. Spaced Out Radio special report on the UFO Report continues right after this. Stay tuned.
Thank you, guys.
Cristina, thank you for helping us make this a great show. Thank you so much.
You have an awesome panel, and I'm so grateful to have been a part of it. But I'll let you guys go. Thank you so much, and
take care, my
fun.
friend.
Bye.
Hey, Christine.
Bye.
Christine, can I say one thing to you real quick?
Yes.
I'm astonished by the amount of research you're able to do in a week. It blows me away that you're able to do so many deep dives and make videos about them and then edit the videos and do all that. I'm super impressed by your diligence.
Thank you. I wear a lot of concealer because I just don't sleep. So thank you so much for that.
I know the feeling. Mine's called a beard, though.
See, I've attempted to grow one, but it's not really working out for me. So I have to put on.
Well, hold on. I have a solution, Cristina. I got 5 different beards here in the studio. I've had fans send me their beards just in case someone needs a beard. Okay, so you're more than welcome to have one. I could ship one to you right now.
That is very kind, but I'll have to deny and refuse and reject that offer. But thank you so much.
Just in case. That's
Make
the kind of
hers
guy we are.
Make hers top ramen, and then maybe she'll wear it.
That I mean, don't pull my arm too hard. I might have to say yes to that one. But thank you guys so much. I'll catch you later.
Bye.
Good night, Cristina. And we'll have Graeme Rendall till the top of the hour, and then he'll have to disappear.
Dave, excuse me. I got word during the break that a cousin of mine and like half her family got killed in one of the tornadoes in Alabama.
Oh, no.
So I'm going to have to bug out because I got to talk to some family members. Yeah.
You get going then, dude.
They lived in a mobile home park, and it's like a big shocker. So thanks for having me on. Great to see all you guys. And I
good thoughts and prayers to your family too, brother.
Thank you. But you guys have a good night, and I look forward to doing this again.
Walter, we'll talk soon.
Sure.
And prayers for your family, my friend. All right, we'll say goodnight to Walter Bosley. And well, that's terrible.
Tornadoes are more threatening than UAP.
Yeah. So we had a tornado come through our town about 3 years ago, and 19 people passed because of it. And I guess she was 7 or 8 at the time, 7 or 8 year old daughter at the time, was staring at me dead in the eye while we were in our hallway of our ranch style home saying, I don't want to die. So after that event, I ended up digging a hole in my crawl space, pouring concrete, rebar, blocking it up, and now I have a storm shelter in my crawl space that we can all run down to. It is such a good feeling to have that available to me because my kids are they're traumatized from tornadoes now.
Oh man, I couldn't. I've been in one tornado in my life, and that was in 1987 in Edmonton, Alberta. I was on a golf course. I was 13 years old on a golf course with my dad and my cousin. We literally watched the storm roll in while we were on the golf course. Scared the daylights out of me. I remember picking up hailstones the size of softballs. And, I mean, you get hit with one of those, you're dead. Mm-hmm. You're dead, right? I mean, I couldn't imagine living in tornado land. I mean, it's bad enough here with forest fires, but I've learned to handle that. You know, I've learned to handle that with escape routes and bug out rooms and everything. But tornadoes, oh, no.
Yeah, here in Illinois, we have the storm shelters too. And we have, our backup supplies in there. But Dan, another thing you might want to do is, before you go into your shelter, you've got to tell people that's where you're at. So
Oh yeah,
when
I
your
show
whole
I
house
show it off
falls
to
in on you,
everybody.
when your
If you,
whole house falls in on you, they know where to dig you out at. You know, it's that
I'm,
kind of thing.
I constantly embarrass my wife because if you come over to my house, I'm showing you my storm shelter.
They're like, let's crawl under the house, guys. Come on.
We
No,
don't have
I've
anything
been
like that in
there
the UK.
before, and yeah, they're terrifying. And that's what, you know, you move away from areas or go to areas where they don't necessarily have tornadoes frequently, and they're so fascinated by them. Like when I moved up to Chicago, people would try to run outside to try to watch one, like, and it's just like, no, run away, go seek shelter. You don't want to sky watch this. Too scary.
I'm wondering if Melinda Leslie, are you still in the chat room? If you are, let me know. I'll send you a link if you want to hook up with us here. So let me know, Melinda, if you're still in the chat room. Thank you to all of our super chatters tonight. We from Pam, Neuro, D. Cohen, Deb, Enki, Lavira, Monica, Area 51, Catfish, Vaughn, Walker, Jeremy, and very much appreciate the love and support. Let's get to see all of you in Vegas, May 19th to 21st. And Scowling Greg O'Brien is going to be there. Just read below on the ticker. We got all the information right there. Second half of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Here we go. We have our panel, Tim Seanor, Graeme Rendall, Dan Warren, and Nicole Sakach, looking up what happened in the UFO report that has finally been dropped. You know, one of the things that came out a few months ago, and Tim Seanor and I were talking about it, Nicole and I have talked privately about it as well, is all of a sudden we started hearing these stories, Dan, about Chinese drones. I mean, it took forever to get the drone word out of it in the Tic Tac era. All right. But now all of a sudden, Chinese drones were back with a vengeance. And we learned in the report that there have been a number of drone sightings, but not everyone. I mean, at some point, are we looking at these as excuses for what the unidentified flying objects may be?
So I also think in the report they weren't able to definitely say that any of the drones that they reported were of Chinese origin. But I do think that we're going to get drones reported. That's just inevitable. We're going to get balloons and balloon-like entities or whatever. But back on the China thing, it's interesting that you say that because the presentation that Kirkpatrick put on yesterday had a hyperlink. There's only one hyperlink in the entire presentation, and it took you to an article that was published, I think, in 1994, revised in 2010 or something along those lines. And it was basically 50 Chinese scientists are requesting support for investigating the UFO phenomena. And this was under the subtitle of foreign involvement in investigating UFOs worldwide. So that to me really stood out as something of significance, that other countries are requesting support to investigate this. And the United States is aware of it. They also say in that statement that they want to know if other foreign countries are observing them and how they are responding to them. So it's interesting to me that they're opening the aperture to stop just looking at what their sensors could pick up. And they're starting to try to see what other countries are doing, what they're seeing, and how they're responding to it, which makes a lot of sense because that's what you want to know, what other people know. That's the whole game we're playing here.
Oh, very much. That is a part of the big game, Nicole. Let's bring you in here on this because it is tough trying to figure out, when the story and the motif seems to change frequently as quickly as the name of the program. I mean, it changes, more frequently than some people change their underwear. I mean, you never know what you're going to get. But I mean, Chinese drones again. And now we see the report.
I've questioned, like I mentioned before, I'm in contact with my local Air Force base, and we always get the unauthorized civilian drones. And I've asked if they're made in China. Like, are these purchased in China, shipped here, and then they're set up over the Midwest by unauthorized civilians? Or is this truly, do they think it is a threat launched from China, sent here? That doesn't make sense to me. And I think this is where maybe we fall short with the public a little bit, is that, and they have the Nimitz scenario in their mind and these Navy incursions, and they think it's all over the oceans and out at sea and just with our like our carriers and things like that. But we have so many cases reported over our land. It's not just out to sea while our ships are on drills, or it's not just at nuclear facilities. And that's where I think the wake up call will be. Like we mentioned with Project Blue Book, investigating civilian cases. If we push this ball forward enough and they're forced to look at civilian incursions over our land mass, the bulk of our country. Like I say, Illinois is huge. And we've had Tic Tac reports, we've had Air Force pilots reporting, and that doesn't get talked about in the news. And I really think that'll start a wildfire at some point in this, when people truly realize that this is happening over middle America. And that's
it's not just America, though, is it, Nicole? Because these
Right.
these sightings are happening worldwide. They're happening in South America. They're happening in Africa. They're happening in Europe. They're even happening over Russia. So does that mean the Chinese drones are operating over those areas as well?
Well,
Because
and
clearly that's crazy.
in China, are they going, oh, it's got to be U.S. drones. It's
Yeah,
U.S.
exactly.
drones over our
But
airspace.
the drone explanation only works for maybe the last few decades, where drones have become sufficiently sort of sophisticated that they can do certain maneuvers. I mean, if you go back further in history to the time of Blue Book and even beforehand, drones were effectively full-size aircraft. That's what they were. They were remotely controlled aircraft that would normally be manned, but they had they were remote controlled from the ground. Or they were the things like the V1 flying bomb. They were remote controlled missiles, and the Russians developed them in the 1950s. So they weren't sophisticated, and they couldn't have accounted for the sightings back then. It's just recently that the capabilities have increased, that they can approach, but maybe not match, some of the reporting that goes on.
I agree with that. And I just lost my train of thought with what else I was going to add to that. So yeah.
Well, let me chip in here for a second, because I'd like to get Tim Seanor here in on the report. Tim, one of the things that we've talked about is, where is the transparency? When can we start seeing, some names? I want to know who these whistleblowers are. We hear it's Kevin Day. We hear it may be Gary Voorhees. We hear it may be the nuclear guy, Robert Salas. Robert Salas. Okay, we hear the names of people who are there from the past, but who really is going? We don't know of the talks. We don't know when they've happened. We don't know when people have been summoned. We don't know if these people have been asked to sign another NDA regarding their whistleblowing. I mean, it just seems to be full of confusion on what is going on. It's one of the great mysteries that has been added to this puzzle.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's going to become very apparent who is doing the whistleblowing by the information that is being released, because we know who our nuclear guy is if there's any information based on that's being released or talked about. And so, I mean, the experts like yourselves are going to be the ones that are going to be able to source that when it is finally released. But my question is kind of a little bit along those same lines, because I don't really have too much insight as to who is going to be a whistleblower necessarily. But there is quite a lot of definition in this report that we are getting, a lot of definitions even. And so the specifics that we are seeing here, does this, and this is the unclassified version, obviously, does this panel, in your opinion, do you think that this lends any details as to what the classified report might look like? Do you have any insight to what that could possibly look like? Anyone please.
Anyone on the panel?
I mean, if they're getting more detail about, like I said earlier, the quarterly reports to policymakers contain greater detail of UAP events, I would assume that's also part of the annual report that's classified, is they'll get more information about it. Do I think there's video or pictures associated with it? I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think they would go that far. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but maybe that's what they get that we don't get is, okay, we've solved X, we've solved half of these things. Let's get you some information about what we've found as far as patterns and things that we've learned about these things that we don't identify. And did they define, one of the things that they talked about is some of them have demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities. If I'm a member of Congress, the next question I'm going to ask after hearing that is, well, what were they? Like, what capabilities, what flight performances? Tell me what those are. So that's what I would hope that they're seeing in these classified documents. And that would be the fire underneath them to keep them going, in my opinion.
Yeah, they'll probably have summaries of those particular things. So there'll be a summary of events, and also if there are strange capabilities and maneuvers, they'll probably be they'll have some wording regarding that, but there won't be in any great detail. If you go back to the Blue Book report from May 1955, they had 12 examples in there. But if you compare what they said in the Blue Book report against the actual investigations, it was a very, very short summary for each, and they weren't entirely accurate in terms of what they were reporting, even in that report, compared with what they said elsewhere. So you just have to wonder what information they're actually giving regarding these events as well, and what are they leaving out.
And that's a big thing for me. What are they leaving out? You know, I can look at this as somebody who is familiar with this field and see a lot of red flags. You know, the fact that they were quickly to explain balloons and drones, but nothing of what was anomalous. Give us something. Tell us it was a cigar shape. Tell us it was a Tic Tac. We already know what a Tic Tac is. Why not give us a little bit more juice? And I don't understand this common fear they have with letting the public know about this. You know, unless these drones or some of this is actually our technology that could be being tested at secret bases like Area 51. That's the only thing that kind of crosses my mind with this is that technology ours? Nicole.
That's what I was going to bring up when you said, is this ours? You know, and if we're going back 17 years with this, and that's the bulk of what they've had reported to them, and I think they added some prior to this 17 years with this latest cache of reports. But when you start reading about special access programs and who can start special access programs and how their classification is determined, whether it's just classified or top secret or, you know, etc. When you get into the details of it, and this is where the two-stepping comes into play, or the song and dance, there's a limited amount of time that a special access program can remain classified unless it changes departments or names or heads of departments. There's all these different circumstances where they can reclassify this and restart the timeline of its classification. It's also very hard still for other agencies or people outside a special access program to get access. There's a whole process. Like we talk about the Wilson Davis notes and what Admiral Wilson was trying to gain access to, and he was just shut out. If he just went up to the head of a SAP and was like, tell me all about it, he would get the book thrown at him like he did. Unless he went through the proper channels to gain access to that and got admitted to it, that's the only way he could find out about it. It's their job to limit that information and limit who has access to it. So this song and dance that we're seeing over and over again, and like Don's statement had me read, this is kind of the same scenario since 1947. You know, they'll bring it out, they'll call it one thing, it'll change from, Graeme, you mentioned Sign, Grudge, Blue Book. You know, that's 3 opportunities right there that they had to reclassify and extend the timeline on a special access program. And that's, 70 years ago. So just with the change of even Space Force forming, when access programs went from the Navy or the Air Force and combined to Space Force, that right there could have redetermined classification and extended a timeline. So when we're talking about whistleblowers that have maybe been a part of legacy programs here, they're not obligated to come forward publicly. If they want to, they can come forward behind closed doors and tell members of Congress or Arrow or the OD&I. So they can talk about it in a limited space, and we're still not going to get any goods, especially if this is a legacy ongoing program. And as far as new cases are concerned, if it gets reported, if it's deemed something that we can exploit or utilize, that's going to get thrown into a special access program as well. Like, they still haven't given us a guarantee that we will get answers, or we will get an explanation. The only guarantee that we've had so far is that they're going to look into it and keep looking into it. So they could do that for decades. And the other thing I want to point out is Ross Coulter, I think, said it best on your interview with him, Dave. All this legislation with the NDAA, they could wait us out. This could get blown away like leaves in the wind. If they decide that the funding isn't necessary, or there's nothing more to look at, or there's no direction they can take this, or if something bigger arises and they want to pull the funding and give it to somebody else, they can do that. We are kind of working with a limited window here of how much we can push and how much we can squeeze, because I really do think the DOD is giving us the waiting game. They're giving us the smallest amount of crap that they can to satisfy the demands that have been made on them. And it's just half-assed. And I think, the excuse with the report being late was the election cycle. What's the excuse going to be with the next report? Are we going to get it on time? Is it going to be, from today's report to the next report, or are we going back to October 31st? And then, is it every 180 days that they have to give us a report? Like, I forget the timeline. But is that deadline going to keep getting pushed back, or is it going to get, on time to us? And is it really going to advance, or are we going to keep getting this kind of watered down, diluted, should have double spaced to fill up more pages? So it's frustrating for sure. And I don't know, I kind of lose all hope when I take it back to 1947 and go, oh, we're at it again. It's like a 20 to 25 year cycle of they'll get us riled up we'll get attention on this, and then it could still all go away. So
I do think that they are playing the waiting game on us, and they are going to try to drag this out and make us lose interest in it. And I think that is one of the main reasons why, thanks to John Greenwald, we found out they are not going to be releasing any other videos of UAPs to the public anytime soon, because they know that's what the public wants. As soon as the public sees the smoking gun video, it's not going to go away like that. That's the dam breaking right there, is that smoking gun 23-minute long video that's going to come out one day. And then everyone in the world is going to turn around, look at the United States government and say, okay, tell us the truth now. You've been lying for this long. Now it's time to come clean. Let's move forward and get this figured out together as a civilization. So I think that's one of the things that we're seeing is the pushback. George Knapp talked about it in his recent interview on Theories of Everything with Kurt Jamungal. He's not as he's more pessimistic than Jeremy Corbell is. He thinks that there's going to be pushback. He thinks that if there's any way to keep this secret, they're going to find a way to do it. And they have the minds, they have the resources, they have the ability, they have the mechanisms to do so. And we're just a bunch of guys and girls on the internet plugging away. And that is our most useful tool, is just overwhelming them with sheer numbers of people interested in this topic that are willing to step forward and say, I'm not an avatar on Twitter. This is my actual face. I'm a human being. I'm interested in this subject, and I want you to know that, and I want you to share your information with humanity because it's for all of us.
We got 3 minutes to go here. I want to turn the corner on this a little bit. Let me play devil's advocate. We know that UFO Twitter and other places, shows like this, even your own TikTok, Dan, are being infiltrated and watched by alphabet agencies. I've been told personally, and I think it's the coolest thing.
Yeah, me too.
All right. But what we are seeing on UFO Twitter, which I think, in my opinion, recently, outside of days like today, has really turned into a cesspool of anger and spite and smite. You know, I look at these government agencies probably looking at that and saying, we can't give these people anything. We can't give them any sort of juice here. I mean, look at the way they're attacking each other and ripping each other apart and doxing each other. These people are pit bulls.
Any community on Twitter does the same thing. Go look at pro wrestling Twitter. Go look at politics Twitter. I mean, it's just human nature. We all fight. We all fuss with each other. You get the most angry at those that you love the most. So we're all a family. We do bicker and fight, but it's just normal human nature. It's unfortunate when it takes such an ugly turn, and I wish that people would live single modality lifestyles to where they treat people the same in person as they do online. It would solve a bunch of this squabbling and fighting and name calling and things that are going on. But it's just the way that humanity responds to each other. And it's so much easier to get hung up on the negative aspects and negative comments. That was the brutal thing about me starting my channel, was I got so many negative comments in the beginning. Well, I would get a few negative comments that I would focus on, and I would get some more positive comments, but I would get a few negatives that would just stick in my craw for forever. So it's just harder to get rid of that negativity than I think most people are aware of. And so we just have to learn how to live with it.
Don't you think, though, that this report that they handed the public is basically picking a fight with the UFO community by starting out with 510 cases from credible witnesses? I mean, these are our trained observers. And they whittle it down to 177 maybe. And in there, they're very carefully wording things, with 163 of these being characterized as balloon or balloon-like entities. Why include a word like balloon-like entities in this report in particular?
I love it. It makes me think of that Batman balloon and the blimp with the sidecar underneath it, and then the orb. So
my mind went straight to Note, the movie Note that came out. That looks like a balloon type entity to me if I had to draw one.
Sure.
Is it one of those car lot balloon entities with the wavy arms? Like,
There's some of
I
those too.
want a
Yeah.
clearer definition on balloon entity.
But
But Dave, to answer you a little bit,
Yeah,
like,
please.
about the community, this is the classic thing we've heard over and over and over again from our community is we can be our own worst enemy when it comes to public information. I mean, it does create that wildfire of interest and the back and forth, and it gets malicious.
It does. We can continue that going into hour number 3 of Spaced Out Radio's special report on the UFO Report. Graeme Rendall, Dan Warren, Tim Seanor, and Nicole Sakach are here breaking it all down. What a panel we've had tonight. Exciting news, exciting times. We'll be right back. I'm going to run and refill my water, my glass here. I also want to mention to the audience, I am going to take some questions from you guys in hour number 3. So when I get back, do me a favor, put your questions in capital letters, and I will try and get to them as soon as possible. So I'm just going to quickly step away, refill my water here, guys.
They don't have to infiltrate us anymore or run that disinformation campaign against a case or our community. We do it to ourselves, and we truly do. And I think you remember in the Storm Area 51 days leading up to that? I mean, so many people were like, no, don't do that. Don't do it. We're all going to look like crazies. Don't do it. And I was kind of in that club before. I was like, what? We're all supposed to go out in the middle of the desert? Like, this is just a bunch of problems, Like, from the onset of Storm Area 51, I was like, Storm Area 51 in Washington, D.C. Like, to me, this needs to be a true united movement like that. I'm not talking about nasty, storming the Capitol building escalation of events. But I do think along the lines of like the Million Man March, we truly need to present our community as a united front. We can disagree, but we still need to come together. Like, let's save the petty infighting for the panels or the Twitter space. Like, it can be go time. Graeme, we'd fly you in. You could come.
Thank you. That's great.
Or we could just coordinate a multi-continent protest.
Yeah.
That might
Perfect.
stir up some action. And yeah. I wish we could find a way to not be our own worst enemy. Like, it's just sad sometimes.
It is. And if you look at Facebook, we talked about social media earlier, everybody has their own ideas seemingly about what's going on, and they won't have any other kind of explanation. There's all these fights and arguments and all the rest of it. And I keep clear of it now. I don't really use Facebook that much because it just seems to be it's not quite a cesspit, but it's certainly it's certainly a hotbed of sort of intrigue and infighting, and it's best I'll just keep away from it, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
I think over the last few years, my social media involvement in the UFO community has really just started to revolve around experiencer groups. Like, if a group's focus is disclosure, it's like that's where the nails are coming out and cat fights happen. But I think social media, from the experiencer point of view, and just talking with so many people and people sharing what's happening with them, and taking it out of that government context or that military context, like, that's where I find my happy spaces on social media. It really is. I mean,
I think through UFO Twitter, I've found quite a lot of people who I've got a hell of a lot of respect for, and I've got a lot of sort of time for. So I'm quite lucky that I've met a lot of, and actually met in person now, a lot of people who I really do appreciate, what they've done and what they say and what they're planning to do. And I have been lucky enough to meet them over the last sort of year, 18 months now. And that happens quite regularly in some instances. So yeah, it's a lot about networking as well, and actually being able to, now COVID's sort of like in decline, hopefully, being able to actually go and see people, because face-to-face conversations, having virtual conversations, they're great, but they're no sort of substitute for being able to talk to somebody across a table somewhere in a bar or a restaurant or a cafe, and actually having a proper conversation with them about what's happening.
Absolutely. I think the more we can get together, I loved the lockdowns, honestly, because it was the rise of Zoom. It's we're all in rooms, we're bored out of our mind, like. And
for the record, I just want to make mention, due to tonight's show, I've worn my special Perry the Platypus pajama bottoms.
I thought you were pantsless.
At least you're wearing them.
Perry the Platypus. And if you don't know who that is, greatest Disney cartoon ever, Phineas and Ferb. Perry the Platypus.
Dad pants.
Guys, thank you guys for doing this, man.
My pleasure, Dave.
It's great for our listeners.
I actually am taking the day off of work tomorrow, but it's because they're having a snow day, so they cancel school tomorrow, so I get to hang out with my kids. But I want you to think it's partially for you.
Hold on a second here. How much snow do you have?
We might not even get any snow. That's the best part about it. There's less than an inch predicted, but they always cancel it because they are concerned for one person getting hurt.
They up here now. My son's school is 2 blocks away. Okay, up here they cancel the buses at minus 36 Celsius. They cancel school at minus 38 to 40.
We cancel on flurries.
I would move.
Thank you to all our super chatters tonight. Hey, we want to see all of you in Las Vegas. Check the ticker below on the screen, and you can get information right there. Here we go.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live at KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. What do you got for us, Clam? Dedans. Dedans is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Our panel for tonight in the final hour, Dan Warren from Fifth Pillar of Emphasis on TikTok. He's got over 300,000 subscribers to his YouTube chats. Author and researcher Graeme Rendall from the UK. Author and researcher Nicole Sakach. And from our UFO report, we have Tim Seanor here tonight, breaking down a special report on Spaced Out Radio where we're going the distance on this one regarding the UFO report that has now dropped finally. It was supposed to come on Halloween night. It didn't. It's finally here in 2023. Panel, welcome back. And we're going to get into some audience questions here momentarily. But for our Canadian listeners out there, I want you all to have a laugh tonight. Why? Because where Dan Warren lives, there is a chance that there might be snow a slim, minute chance in the South that there might be snow, so they have canceled school for tomorrow.
That sounds like jealousy. I don't know if you guys hear it in his voice, but I sure do.
He's always like this.
Oh, Danny,
that's
Danny,
him
Danny.
bragging. This is him bragging.
I am just.
It wasn't like this when I was a kid. When I was a kid, they sent you to school, but now they just they canceled just at the thought of snow.
You nailed it. You nailed it.
Oh my goodness! I am just. I had to bring some humor to this, because heaven forbid that snowflake can hurt. It's funny though. I will say this: where I grew up near Vancouver, okay, they don't allow kids to bring toboggans to school because a child may get hurt if it snows. My son's school 2 blocks away has, in their PE course, they will take out the crazy carpets and actually go sliding down the hills that go into the soccer fields and the baseball fields at school. If somebody breaks an arm, well, you know what? That's called winter. That's called winter around here. If you get a little concussion because you get run over, that's called winter. And so careful.
You've
of that
got
one.
it so rough up there.
Is a toboggan a sled? Is that what a toboggan is?
I thought it was a
Good
hat.
one, Nicole.
Really?
I need clarification. Here in the Midwest, we call them sleds. I mean,
That's
I know
right.
you guys have beanies and you call them something else up there.
We
Like
call them
They're
toques.
called
That's right,
sledges
toques.
in the UK.
Oh my.
Everything's
my.
backwards up
my
there.
son has 2. He's got like the classic red plastic one, and then this year I got him this inflatable one that has a seat and like a cup holder, and he can like shoot down these hills. And
Luxury.
like no snow.
I used to use a fertilizer bag when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I know.
Graham giving up gems. Oh, that is great.
Do all sorts of things. Like if your snowsuit was thick enough, we would just, like a penguin down hills. Like,
There was nothing worse as a kid when you would do all your daytime tobogganing down the hills, okay, and your snowsuit would get absolutely soaking wet. So you would go in just about an hour before dinner, because that's when your freezing level finally hit, and you would dry everything, put everything over top of the one little heater that's on the floor, okay, and then for the evening you would put all this wet gear back on and get right back out there, run back to the hill, meet your buddies, and then go until bedtime, right? And you'd just be shivering, and everything would be wet and cold, but you didn't care. You had to go. You had to go. It was just one of those things.
Daytime tobogganing sounds like a euphemism for something, but I'm not entirely sure what.
I think we call that a nooner.
You people are sick. People are sick. All right, let's get back to UFOs here for a minute, because we do have some audience questions and we do want to get them involved. Let's start off with Joe in California, who is asking, how many world leaders made a deal like Eisenhower with the aliens to allow them to kidnap people in exchange for technology? Now, I love this question because I think this is one of those questions that is stuffed deeply in the UFO Pandora's box, sitting about 84 floors below the Pentagon. Nicole, I know you like your woo. I'll give you this one.
oh, well, I can't say I'm really a believer in the Eisenhower document. Like, I know it's part of our lore and our anthology, but I truly don't think there needs to be a government deal struck by ET or the phenomenon. It's already disclosing itself to us and giving individuals or groups of people, the experience. Like I think that's the ET disclosure. It's already happening. So I don't think there is deals cut. I think there's probably deals cut between countries, possibly, or this race to exploit what they've collected or found or crashed material, that end. But I think people forget the humanity that Eisenhower actually had. You know, he was known for, you know, his time spent in World War II, but he truly loved people and the community. So I don't really see him, you know, fighting for our citizens and fighting for democracy in the free world and then turning around and going, oh yeah, for this shiny piece of whatever, take whoever you want. Like, I don't see that. I don't see that scenario.
Well, it is an interesting scenario. Go ahead.
I just don't see an advanced civilization even needing to ask permission, to be honest with you. When we go into the jungles and the forests, we don't consult with anyone before we tranquilize someone and start to figure them out a little bit. So, but if I had to guess of anybody in the world that would have done it, it would have been those German dudes, because there's so many more occult connections to what they were looking into in WW2 that are very interesting. So if anybody was going to step up and try to make a agreement with the ETs, that they would be those guys.
Well, I mean, hey, if you want to believe his great-granddaughter, Lauren Eisenhower, who believes it's true, I mean, it's a conspiracy that we don't know. And like I always say, Graeme, Dan, you know, Nicole and Tim have heard me say this before, same as our audience. I do believe that all of these questions, until real disclosure happens, all of these questions are on the block. You know, and it's up to the government to prove or disprove Eisenhower and the rumors. It's up to the government to prove or disprove Bob Lazar. You know, we can sit here and debate Bob Lazar all we want, day in and day out. However, until we actually get the proof in that disclosure movement, then we don't know. And it's still going to be one of those UFO conspiracies that runs amok among many people. It really is. Let's go to another question here regarding G West. Does the panel have any hope in the team that NASA has created to study UFOs? Is there any news on that? I'll hit up that one last because I usually rage when NASA comes up on this show.
I've got a very boring take on it, so I'll go first if you guys don't mind.
Go ahead.
But my understanding of the scope of that entire effort is that they're not really studying UFOs. They're performing a study to determine how to study UFOs. It's just like they're scoping their effort. They're saying what kind of tools and access would we need to get information and how much would it cost? And they're going to take the results of that report and turn around and say, well, here's a bill. Here's a bill for researching this. What do you guys think? Do you want to do it or not? I think that's all this thing is.
Yeah, I'd agree with
Could
that.
be
So
Graeme.
it was a minimum amount. Was it $100,000? Was that how much that allocated to it? I can't remember exactly. And it was a trifling sum in terms of the overall scheme of things. But that's money that they could spend on a probe to Saturn or to Neptune or something. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of people at the time when they come forward and say, "Oh yes, you know, we've got this and we can do this for X amount of money." There'll be other voices raised saying, "Oh yes, but you know, NASA's a scientific organization. We're looking for things, you know, in our neighborhood. We're not looking for aliens." So therefore they'll probably want to justify the money being spent on something else. So I can see it being sort of pushed into the long grass in the future when they do come up with something saying, yes, okay, there's a possibility we might be able to look at something, but it'll cost you.
Tim.
Yeah, buddy.
Your thoughts on NASA?
Well, I mean, you kind of know, we've talked about this quite a bit. I was really disappointed to see that really they are just looking into asking the question. They are not looking into any of their history. They're not going to be asking their astronauts anything about what they've seen. They're not going to be listening to a conversation with Elon Musk. They're not going to be doing anything like that. And so I expect nothing. Again, now they can surprise us. That would be fantastic. But again, I think they're just looking at how to potentially even take a look at this. They're in no way looking to come out with any of the information that they have historically. And, there would be a lot to answer for if they were going to start opening their informational vaults.
Nicole?
I'll piggyback on what Graeme said a little bit. With they have such a limited budget that they've decided to work with here, and they've also limited their time. I believe, if I'm remembering right, they've given themselves months. So, and I think if I'm still remembering correctly, we're about halfway through that 9 months right now. And what have they really established besides a team? And the other thing, like Tim mentioned, they're not going back and looking at their history. I'll piggyback on that a little bit. The ISS, there is so much up on ISS right now that could be utilized to look just sensory data. And on top of what is NASA's up on ISS, if we're talking about corporations or the military industrial complex, they have projects up on ISS right now. And so to know that they're looking into this, but they're not utilizing what they have up there already, to me, they could have brought all that to the table to begin with and been like, hey guys, we have this. Help us go through it. Let's deem this worthy or not. And probably my worst case scenario is NASA will be used against us. They'll come out with their findings or say that there really isn't anything to pursue here, and it'll be like a nail in our coffin. They'll be like, well, NASA says it isn't worth it. And then the DoD will say, nothing's a threat. And then it'll all go away, Condon style. That's my worst case scenario.
Well, I'm going to give my opinion here, because I think if anybody could look at a joke of ufology, it is NASA. And I have been highly disappointed in anybody in ufology who actually cheers them on for this absolutely useless study, when nobody has asked Bill Nelson, who brought the topic out for no reason, what's in your closet, Bill? What's in your closet? And to put icing on the cake of what I am saying, if anybody caught it, and very few people did, with Elon Musk 3 weeks ago saying his SpaceX rockets are being followed by something anomalous in space. We know that's happened through Mercury and Gemini, Apollo, the shuttle missions. And for Bill Nelson to absolutely insult the American public, saying that we're going to do a study on this for $100,000, and I'm going to give all my best buds $10,000 each, or around that amount of money, to come and hang out with me on taxpayer revenue. All he has to do is go through his filing cabinets. That's it. That's it. And the fact that Nelson, in all of his conversations about UFOs, has not mentioned the word NASA once. He's mentioned the Navy pilots, how many pilots he's seen. He's seen the videos. He's seen and talked to the pilots about their experiences. He's very curious. Never once has he mentioned astronauts. Okay? McDivitt saw things. Mitchell saw things. Cooper saw things. And a bunch more have seen things. The Russian cosmonaut filming the lit up check mark up on the International Space Station about 1.5 years ago. This is happening more frequently. He hasn't addressed Musk's comment about the anomalies following SpaceX. So, Bill, what are you doing? What are you doing? In my opinion, it's making a mockery of what we are talking about. If you guys disagree with me, please let me know. I'm willing to talk about this and give you the stage here. But to me, I think it's a slap in the face to not only the UFO community, but to the community at large. As
they
we
all
learn
have,
about
haven't
this
they?
topic.
If you go back in history, so you go back to the Robertson panel, Blue Book, etc., the Condon report, the study, they're all the same. They seem to be put forward as being, oh yes, we're really looking into this, we're taking it seriously, but then you know exactly what the outcome's going to be. So it's a similar kind of thing throughout history.
Well, I would also.
Oh,
I would also think that the NASA situation with Bill Nelson being the head, he's kind of like an elected official. He's a temporary employee. He was appointed by President Joe Biden to go in there and do some things. Just like in the United States government, the president's elected, but he's a temporary employee. There's deep state people that have been there for decades that are behind the scenes running the show. I would assume that Bill Nelson is facing the same thing at NASA, and that could be a potential explanation for why he hasn't been able to pry that information out quickly, and it's just not readily available to him, possibly. That would be my pushback. I feel like Bill Nelson's heart is in the right place. I feel like he's trying to do the right thing. Do I think he's going to be successful? I don't know. Time will tell, but he is sure bringing a lot of attention that NASA never really wanted to their organization. So I got to commend them for that.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing, though. This shows the weakness of journalism, that not one single journalist in his press conferences has asked him point blank, what do you know? Bill, what do you know? You have an interest in this topic. What do you know? And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to go watch Darcy Weir's documentary on secret space UFOs about Mercury and Gemini. Okay, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to Wikipedia or Google astronauts who have seen UFOs. And none of them have done it. So that is my argument, because somebody has to put Bill on the spot. That's just common journalism. That's not even trying to be a jerk, okay? But sorry, Bill, you brought this up. You brought up the topic of UFOs a year ago, and for no reason. Now you need to answer. What's in your closet? That's it. That's it.
This hits on one of my favorite topics, is the fact that the media, like this, I'm quoting Ross Coulthart, that the media has been snowed. Like, where is mainstream media investigating this? Ross is so shocked that he's the only one that's pursuing it in the way that he's doing it, that he's beating everybody to this, when everyone should be clamoring to cover this topic and dig into it.
Agreed.
And it's so interesting, and it's so fun to be involved in something that could change humanity for the next 10,000 years in ways that we don't even know yet. So how come no one else is jumping on board with all the evidence that's been presented? That's what we need to know. Where's the media? Everyone else will follow.
I think that was my question before. Sorry, go on. I think that was my question before about, why aren't the media jumping on this report? And yes, okay, I understand that social media is like getting more and more, sort of involved in things, and people are taking the news from there rather than mainstream media. But actually, it's still quite important what you see on your television. Certainly in the UK, the BBC are still quite important in terms of news givers. So it would be interesting to see what their take of these things are.
I can give you two answers to that. Well, one answer and one example. I'll give the example first. I've done, over the last year and a half, probably 36 interviews outside of our radio station, Saga 960, about UFOs across Canada. And never once during those interviews has any reporter or talk show host or journalist asked me if this is happening in Canada. They all want to know about what's going on in the United States, because to them it's a joke. Never once. And I've even tried to steer the conversation and say, hey, there is a Canadian side to this we may want to look at. Right? But the other thing, to answer your question, Graeme, is we've got about a minute to go here. The media, if you've ever worked in the mainstream media, you know point blank that when a phone call about UFOs or Bigfoot or something strange comes in, you don't have time for it. You think it's a joke. You think it's somebody who's high or drunk or a little bit loony, and you play with them on the phone a little bit. You know, like, you didn't get anal probe now, did you? That's the way it's handled, because most journalists, okay, think they are too good for this subject. They think they're too smart for this subject, and they think it, more importantly, it's a waste of bylines. It's a waste of space. A key note on that is the New York Times, who sold the most papers since 9/11 on the December 2017 story, and they never followed up the story for 4 months. Who does that? And there is more to that, but we got to go to break. Final half hour of the special report on UFOs at the UFO Report. Dan Warren, Graeme Rendall, Tim Seanor, and Nicole Sakach are here tonight. We're going to take them right to the top of the hour. Spaced Out Radio's UFO Report continues right after this. Stay tuned. To follow up on what I'm saying, I actually gave a speech on this in Denver. And what really, when you as a journalist are covering things that you don't want to cover, okay, you softball it. Like, for instance, the example I used, I hate, and Graeme, don't take this the wrong way, but I loathe soccer. Okay, can't stand it. And my sports director was a soccer nut. So he would have me go cover a Vancouver Whitecaps game. I'd bring my pillow to the press box, snore a little bit. No, truth. You could ask Vancouver Province reporter Steve Ewan about waking me up in the press box. And long story short, okay, when you have zero interest in a story, you throw a bunch of softball questions to get in and out. So in my case, it would be, hey, that was a pretty good game. You know, tell me about your goal. How do you prepare and build the momentum off of this one to the next one? Real boring, cliche type questions. You say that to 2 or 3 players, and then you get the hell out. Mm-hmm. Okay? There's no digging because you don't want to be there. Okay? You know, you think, God, why am I here? It doesn't matter whether it's, you know, sports or politics or whatever it may be. All right? And so from there, you come back to the station, you cut up your stories, and then you move on to the next story. You don't really care. When it comes to this subject, they don't know how to cover it. And when TTSA, they were brilliant when they first came out, okay, because what they did was they went to all the major media, okay, and they said, hey, you don't have to research this. We're giving you the fighter pilot. We're giving you the guy who ran the organization at the Pentagon. We're giving you the government official in Mellon. That's all you need. There's your story. So TTSA actually, oh, and by the way, here's the videos we stole. Okay. So TTSA actually did everybody big favors by giving them David Fravor, Lou Elizondo, and Chris Mellon, because they didn't need anybody else. They don't know anybody in ufology. The mainstream media doesn't know who any of us are. They don't know who Grant Cameron is, or Richard Dolan, or the late Stanton Friedman, or Linda Moulton Howe, or whoever's been around the block for decades. They have no clue. Yeah. So here they've softballed it. You could tell by their questions. Are you sure there's no little green men?
They're very superficial, aren't they? The questions they're very shallow. They don't have much depth to them. But it wouldn't take them much to actually get involved, would it? It wouldn't take a huge amount of effort or work for them to actually look into the subject and find a few people who they could talk to and actually get a few answers which would actually inform their, how they would go forward in terms of what questions they would then ask. Because you'll see investigative journalism just by looking at political issues, and they dig and they dig, and they're not satisfied until they get to the bottom of things. And yet in this, you can tell they're just not interested, or they just don't understand it. There's probably a bit of both at play here. And I think the last thing a journalist wants to be is to be shown up with the fact that they don't know what they're talking about.
Absolutely. And they don't want to, and trust me, they don't want to be the UFO guy or the UFO girl. They don't. Okay. They don't want to have that reputation. They think that that's going to ruin their career on getting raises. Oh, you fell for the conspiracy tinfoil hat crowd. They don't want it. It's scary to them. Okay. And that's the big reason why we are not seeing the answers that we want. I mean, dude, when Nelson came out and started talking about UFOs at the NASA podium, there were what, 10, 20 journalists sitting there, and not one of them says, what about NASA? What does NASA know about this? Not one. How do you miss that question when the head of NASA is standing at a frickin' podium right in front of you? That's impossible. It's impossible, yet it happened.
Yeah. Well, look at the effort, again, that they put into this report. They don't want to talk about this topic. And Graeme, you brought up a great point, but the reason that they don't go and ask those questions is because they don't want to deal with the answers. Absolutely, 100%. You can tell that this report screams that kind of information, right? And even just going into some of the wordage in here, when they're even talking about NASA, and it says here, word for word, AARO will coordinate with other non-IC agencies such as, and then they name some four-letter agencies. There is absolutely no commitment. It's all very general. And honestly, if they did get one detail of information, they would be so inclined to not reveal that, at least publicly. Now, I
Tim,
would be curious.
I gotta
Go
cut.
ahead.
I gotta cut you off right there. We're gonna come back on here in 4 seconds.
Go for it.
We rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on with the final half hour of our special segment tonight. The UFO report was finally released after all of us waiting 3 months, and I don't think anybody could be more happier than our good friend Dan Warren over on TikTok at Fifth Pillar of Emphasis, who actually had to use up a number of pieces of chalk on his chalkboard, labeling the days and how many days went by without that report. You know, I got to tell you, Dan, for people who are not subscribed to your Fifth Pillar of Emphasis, they're missing out on the comedy that is there. They really are. You got something very special going there.
This subject is missing a lot of fun. Like, this subject can be so enjoyable and you can get so much out of it, but people don't tend to do that naturally. So I'm just trying to enjoy myself, enjoy the journey that I'm on with everyone else on UFO Twitter, with everyone else on TikTok, with everybody on this panel as well. So it's a good spectator sport almost to be involved in, and why not have fun with it? So that's what I'm trying to do.
All right, let's get back to the audience questions here. The slides that apparently reporter D. Gene Johnson saw, is anybody got them? Has anybody seen them? Are you going to review them?
I've got them here. Yeah, it's from he was Sean Kirkpatrick was he was talking to the Transportation Research Board. So yeah, they're all available online, but yeah, they're pretty interesting. In some ways, they're actually more interesting than the report.
Definitely.
I'm going to try and bring them up here for our audience.
So before we get to the report, I want to kind of put this in everybody's brain as giving them a little perspective on how to review what he's talking about. Sean Kirkpatrick is the director of the AARO program that we've been talking about. the all domain anomaly resolution office. And so in the presentation slides, in the meat of it, they don't bring it to the forefront. They have a new logo. They have a new symbol. And on that logo, around the perimeter of it, they have some Latin words on it. And I can't read Latin, so I'm not going to attempt it. But when you take those words and put it into the translator, it reads, "The universe is changing. Our life is what our thoughts make it." So that is what Arrow is putting out on the logo on this presentation. So I don't know what that means in relation to what they found or what they're thinking, but to me, it almost sounds like it's a hat tip to consciousness, a consciousness connection.
I'm trying to find these slides online.
You have to go to D. Dean Johnson's Twitter. You might have to download it. Actually, I texted it to you earlier today.
I know. I will.
I've just have a look at the private chat there, Dave. I've put a link in there for you.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, because I want to be able to show our YouTube audience what these are all about here, so that way we can actually have a little bit of discussion on them here. All right. Oh, I did see those. I thought I was missing something. All right. Here we go.
I just sent them to your Signal too.
Got them here. So we have these slides here. And Graeme, I'm going to just kind of bring you in here for a quick second. Let's go through these. What do these actually mean?
So it's, as I say, it was a presentation to the Transportation Research Board, and it was basically it's just a fairly basic kind of look at what RO is doing. So it's, what they are, what they're hoping to achieve, how they're going to look at the reports, and how it actually applies. Well, in this case, how it applied to the Transportation Research Board. So they go through and they talk about, and as we mentioned before, it does mention spaceborne. That's what UAP are: sources of anomalous spaceborne, airborne, seaborne, or transmedium observations that are not yet attributable to known actors or causes. So there's your definition. It talks about how it was set up in terms of it's a uniquely capable Defense Department organization that it pulls in operational, scientific, and intelligence capabilities to try and work out what UAP are. And it goes through all the various types. It goes through their mission statement. It has their vision, so what they're looking to achieve. It then mentions about where these things are supposedly sighted. So it mentions about reporting over US territory and their operating areas. Talks about possible threats to the immediate safety of US citizens and government facilities. That's a priority for them. Also, there's operating areas sensitive. Also strategic capability. So I think we're talking about nuclear assets there, not just nuclear weapons facilities, but probably nuclear power plants, that kind of thing. And then there's talking about foreign territory. So we're looking at overseas from the United States as well. And there is that link that Dan mentioned before to that talking about the Chinese wanting to get at the Chinese angle. And then there's just a breakdown of how Arrow basically is set out and how it integrates towards operations and research and analysis, and also communications with other bodies. So they're talking about working with stakeholders. So that's management speak for other agencies, effectively, that have an interest in this. But they also talk about in the actual report, it's not necessarily mentioned here. They talk about sharing information with foreign partners, and I'd love to know what is being shared. Is that more of a one-way street? Are the Americans getting information from abroad, but they're not necessarily sharing too much about what they know with the likes of the UK? It would be lovely to work that out. The focus of this presentation is really, I think, that we're trying to encourage more reporting from the likes of the TRB, etc., because part of one of the slides is about educating aviators and crews. So we're trying to break the stigma down again, because obviously it's important that they get more information. So another part of that says encourage reporting, because they admit that, and here's the phrase: historically, reticence to UAP reporting has limited the government's ability to guard against aerial safety and security threats. And if they look at it from a threat angle, which we discussed earlier, then the more information they have from an intelligence angle, the better. And that's always something that they've always strived towards. Even back in the Blue Book days of the 1950s, they were clamoring for more information. Every official release said, we're trying to improve the intelligence. So that's part of it. And then the other bit on that particular slide mentions about leverage our expertise and systems. So that they're looking at ways that when they do get this information, they can work with military, civil, industrial partners to develop the reporting mechanisms, so that it becomes easier for people to report UAP sightings. And then that information can be quickly sort of put into the overall pot of information they have, so they can analyze things better, and then they can feed back to all these reporting agencies to say, yeah, we need more of this kind of thing. So yeah, that's basically the where this presentation, the kind of direction of travel is going. And I'm sure this presentation, if it hasn't done already, will have been provided to other agencies and other groups.
One thing that I do know about that, to add to what you just said, Graeme, is I do know that the Canadian government has been read in on this subject a couple of times. And I know members of parliament on the opposition side have been read in as well. So Justin Trudeau and his government were read in 2021 and again in 2022, early in February, March of 2022. So there is some truth to what you're saying there about the foreign governments. That's for sure. And I would lean more towards the Five Eyes on that. Let's get to another question here from our audience. Let's go to Bad Cop No Donut. Are you sorry, we already had that one. I apologize. And let's go to Mennonite Abe. How many of these quarterly UAP reports will we see before they finally start giving up the goods? Nicole, let's start with you on this one.
All of them. As many as they'll crank out. I don't think they're ever going to give up the goods. I don't mean to be the negative Nancy about it, but I argue this in private groups all the time. I don't think it's going to happen. I think the two-stepping and the disorganization is going to continue.
How about you there, little Timbit?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I am a little bit newer to this topic. So for me, these are massive steps. So I mean, personally, this is big. And so for me to hear the USG speaking on this topic so seriously, I get little nuggets out of everything that comes out. And so I do think we're going to get more information as they retrieve it. I think it will be like pulling teeth again, but I think if we follow very closely and listen to the narrative, and maybe with help from people like Lou Elizondo that drop little nuggets, and people like Chris Mellon that kind of have their finger on the pulse, perhaps we'll get some information with the help of these reports. And now publicly, I don't expect very much, but behind closed doors, I hope that the real information is getting to the people that can make some legislative changes in some positive way to help deal with this topic. And I don't quite see how they would, but those are the decisions that Congress needs to make. So I do see more of these reports coming, and I do see more information coming from them. At some point, they're going to have to explain exactly what these 171 cases potentially really are.
Lou Elizondo on Twitter today was cheering up a bunch of people who were congratulating him, saying that he expects 2023 to be a big year. It kind of coincides with this question. Do any of you see this happening? Do any of you see this going forward, that we are going to be getting more out as 2023 goes along?
That's always the hope. That's always the dream. There's always action. There seems to be a massive, once again, if we take a step 10 years back and we look at what was going on then compared to what's going on now, we're moving at a very quick pace compared to where we were. So do I think that momentum is going to continue? Yes. Do I think that we're going to get the goods this year? I don't necessarily hold my breath for that, but I do think that we're going to continue to see progress being made. I do want to circle back to the quarterly reports, but first I also want to say, Graeme, oh my goodness, you really impressed me with your ability to do all that recall on the slides. I read through them once and I couldn't have done a fraction of what you were able to recall. That was very impressive, sir.
That was impressive. That was impressive, Graeme.
But on the quarterly reports, a technicality, we're not going to see any of the quarterly reports. Those are just for the members of Congress and the policymakers. We only see the public-facing annual reports. But what I'm hoping those will solicit is that more Lou Elizondos will get fed up with being, hey, they know the people that know something's going on are going to get fed up. And if these reports keep coming out as copy and paste burgers, then they're going to eventually say, well, I'm going to resign and then I'm going to leave and then I'm going to be an advocate on the outside to do what's right for the American people, just like Lou Elizondo has. So I'm hoping that's what is going to be the end result of these reports, is that it frees people up to speak more openly about it and to take action and help the American people and help the world and help humanity and see where this goes.
Yeah, I agree. I think the information that we'll get this year, if we get anything, will come from people who the government can't necessarily control to any great degree. So that's where the progress will be made. In terms of what comes out of the official reports, we will still continue to get this every time one is released, and there'll be a big palaver about, that's a great word, about how long it takes for these reports to come out, and inevitably there'll be more delays. But when we get it, it'll be a cut and paste job, again, with just a few extra bits of information about the number of sightings. And I suspect, like I said before, they'll probably gloss over the previous ones because they've got a lot of work to do to go back about these cases and try and work out what they are. And if they are going to go back to 1945, like they've said that they're going to do this historical kind of retrospective, then that's a ton of work. Who's going to have the time and resources to be able to feed all that information into a database to work out kind of trends and patterns from all that? That's a fantastic amount of effort and work that will be needed.
Very true. Very true. We only have about 5 minutes to go here. Let's go to Pam. Do we know what the difference is between a disc sighting that she saw in her youth or a triangle? Have we figured out the differences yet?
I've always assumed that there's a propulsion system effect on it. A saucer is a perfect circle. If there's a power source in the middle of it that extends in a radius form, then it's going to make a perfect bubble. The triangles, they have lights on the end of them. So that to me is an indicator that there's something associated with them, with the main power source being in the middle from what the lore says. But it's also different. That's one thing I always get in arguments with people about, that say, if that spacecraft could fly from a different galaxy to here, why would it crash? Well, I don't think that all spacecraft or all UFOs have the ability to travel those long distances. That's why there's things that we would refer to as motherships. That's why we have battleships that go across the ocean, and then we have planes that launch off of them to go do a task. So I think different shapes do have different tasks associated with them. What those tasks are, I don't know.
The biggest question of the night comes from Neil. Why couldn't they have just brought out this report back in late October? Have any of you investigated or found out why there was a 3-month delay on this?
I think they owe us an explanation, man. This is lame. This is a lame duck.
Yeah.
I think it speaks to the amount of disorganization that is still happening. I know a few months ago, Gillibrand was asked. I think it was actually when Kirkpatrick was named as head as Arrow, and he kind of didn't. It seemed like he didn't know what to do with this promotion, if you want to look at it as a promotion. And she told him, to make it his own and to, use his resources and really turn this into something big. And I think this speaks to the groups we've seen since. I like to take it back to the Invisible College, but when it was truly, named the Avery or the Advanced Theoretical Physics Working Group, I think what we've seen with these groups in the past is that they have a want to look at this, or they're pressured or pushed, or they have a desire from the inside, but then there's lack of money, lack of organization. If they have a little bit of money and a little bit of idea of what they want to do, one person thinks it's their job or they should do this, or another person thinks they should do this, almost like what we even saw with the Bigelow Skinwalker Ranch saga. So we get all these scientists out there, but they don't really have a true set of what they're going to do. And then something happens and they didn't have their equipment set up. I think there's a lot of factors at play here still. That's what I was touching on earlier, even with Blue Book. So we had 2, 4, 5 guys with Project Blue Book running all over the country investigating cases. And here we have Arrow and OD&I organizing themselves, and we keep getting told, oh, we're in the, formation of this. It's going to take some time. Are they really putting the effort in to turn these into good programs, or are we going to see them stall out as their money runs out and they remain unorganized? Like, that's what I think. I think somebody was like, oh, you weren't doing the report? I thought you were making the report. Who's in charge of the report? Like, the report's due tomorrow. That sort of thing. I think they're going to push it off and blow it off as much as possible, because maybe Sean Kirkpatrick is the head of this, but in my mind, he's not really steering the ship yet. Does he have a team in place? Have they named the team? Like, do they all have their job assignments? Do they know what they're going to do?
And his leadership keeps getting changed around too. Now it's not going to be Moultrie and I forget who it was. It's going to be Hicks and Stacy Dixon, I believe. So that's a whole new dynamic that's just been thrown on them.
Who made the evaluations as to, they're possible balloon-like entities? Who made all these kind of evaluations? What are their expertise in being able to make such determinations?
Well, we saw this with the Oak Shannon notes and the Jack Hope notes, piggybacking off of the Wilson Davis notes. It's they come together, they have a kind of a makeshift goal, but then it's like, oh, we need to bring in this person or we need to bring in that person. And whether or not they do get who they want to head this, and then it all falls through. So that's
panel.
Where we're at.
I want to say thank you, Nicole Sakach, Tim Seanor, Graeme Rendall, Dan Warren, and, of course, Walter Bosley, Cristina Gomez, and Don Schmidt for coming in for a great special tonight on the UFO panel. And we're going to continue asking these questions. That's what we have to do. That is the job we volunteered for the public, to inform you on what's going on all mediums, whether it's terrestrial radio, alternative podcasts and YouTube channels, TikTok, social media, wherever it may be. So thank you to the panel tonight. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with the little brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAP, Facebook, Spreaker, the Space Travelers Club, LinkedIn, and on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio.
I know you're out there somewhere.
Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night. All right, we're clear.
Awesome.
Well, that was fun.
I think that's stuff. Remember, our YouTube audience can still hear us.
I thought we had another hour. That went so fast.
That was an amazing show, guys. An amazing show.
I'm bummed Don's audio didn't work out. When I saw he was on it, my eyes opened up a little bit wider.
no.
I was like, "Oh snap!"
You're gonna have to
Dude,
have Don back on for a full show.
Oh, I have been waiting 8 years for that moment. 8 years for that moment. And I mean, let's just be honest, though. I mean, before we go any further on Don Schmidt and how brilliant he is, can we at least, have some dedication and some praise for that great hairdo that he has? Fantastic hair. That is just gorgeous hair,
man.
Total Hollywood. Total Hollywood. Oh my gosh.
I adore Don. I adore him. Like, I'm
So
looking
jealous.
at how many books I have. Three Schmidt books.
Your first Schmidt.
And he also carries himself. He has an aura about himself that I lack. Like, he is
It's the tie. It's the tie. That's what I was saying. I think right before you joined, I always get nervous when I know Don's tie is going to be around.
That is true. I have no. I can confirm that because Nicole said that to me right before the show. I mean, at least it wasn't his red power tie. I mean, if it was the red power tie, I mean, we may have, some of us may have actually, received concussions from that.
It makes ladies faint. It honestly does. But no, honestly, I wanted to hear Don really fire on the Air Force. Like, I just love it. Rapid fire. He can go all the way back to the beginning of Roswell and just give you every sneaky, shady, crappy thing the Air Force has ever done, and they're still doing. And I think it's so important that still gets hammered right now. Like, I just do.
I tell you.
Before you guys go, could I ask one quick question? How do you guys feel perhaps about how Tim Burchett responded as this is a cover-up? Do you agree with that bold statement, or do you think we fall kind of somewhere in between here? Or do you think that he's just completely in the know at this point?
I think
Dan Warren, answer that one, please.
I think he's on the outside looking in as far as what a congressman goes. He's not on any of the committees that received the classified reports. He wasn't even able to sit in, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think he was able to sit in on, or at least not ask questions at the congressional hearings. So, but I mean, I've had conversations with him. He is a lifelong nerd like us as far as thinking that there's something more to what we've been told. And I mean, he's a Bigfoot aficionado as well. So he's open-minded and he's thinking through, and John Greenwald will even tell you that, yeah, there's evidence of a cover-up of something. What that is, we don't 100% have the facts out on that. So I think he's just looking at what's the information available, and he's saying there's a cover-up of some sort. We need to get to the bottom of it. And so that's where I think his default setting is it's a cover-up comes from.
And do you think that that means that this whole investigation is just kind of bunk? Like they really know the truth, but this is all just very much for show?
I think he agrees with Ross that we're getting snowed. Like he definitely thinks like, oh, they know more than this. They're just giving us, they're just dangling a carrot in front of us. They're trying to placate us instead of actually giving us any useful and factual information. They're playing dumb.
That's a brilliant observation right there. They are playing dumb. Go
I
ahead,
think
Nicole.
his comments are kind of following suit with, and I know everybody gets shaken with fear when I bring up this name, but I think he's kind of following suit or maybe seeing shades of what Ron Pandolfi calls the cash grab. And it's not necessarily that this entire thing is a lie or a cover up, but they are possibly covering the true intention of what their disclosure is or what this push is about. And I mean, we're seeing a lot of cash come out on the table right now. You know, new departments getting formed, you know, organizations, and it's kind of like what I mentioned earlier. This rug or this funding could get pulled and diverted somewhere else. And
do you think, very briefly, do you think that the threat narrative is the thing that's keeping that wound together, and that why we keep hearing that very underlying theme?
Definitely. I think part of the cash grab is, I think it honestly stems back to even the formation of Space Force. You know, that forming Space Force took money away from the Air Force. You know, that kind of funding got redirected. And I think a lot of the cash grab that's up for grabs right now involves the privatization of space. And so I think when you really look at where disclosure has traveled, it kind of has been to countries that have space interests or private space interests. And we're seeing a shift, or we've seen a shift with NASA and ISS and our interest in space. And they're calling it the Leo economy. You know, they're wanting to make a new space-based economy and open up money for that. And what better way for the military industrial complex when we're not at war? What better way to keep using their toys and spending their money or getting money? You know, to me, it kind of fits. So I don't like it. I think it's a middle finger up to our community. I think it's a way we're getting used, but we've been hearing it from people like Ron Pandolfi, and I think Bob Kiviat has a couple specials coming up that are going to be aired on Fox that are really going to kind of air this out from that point of view. But, you know, whether it's a cash grab for programs or a cash grab for special access programs, or just another avenue for us to get trickle down programs into the public. You know, like we've heard rumors that, you know, elements of our cell phones have come from reverse engineered tech, or what was our latest one? Fusion. You know, like until the Department of Energy, we didn't talk about that tonight. They were listed in this report, and they have their hands in so much. Like, and to me, if we're talking about reverse engineered tech, if it's not in the hands of a SAP that's been turned over into some sort of corporation to protect them from oversight, then it's got to be buried in the Department of Energy. I mean, if we're talking about how crafts can have an alternative propulsion system, that's going to be in the DOE. And the DOE is so protected from the other branches of our government. They have so much authority that others don't. They control labs. They just everything. Look it up. Dig into them. Sorry, I rambled.
Right back to the Atomic Energy Commission days.
All of it. And I wish I had it with me right here because I've been on this for the last couple months, but I've been trying to get anybody to join my team here of just this privatization of space. It just really bothers me that our community is possibly being harangued, for that extent. But to me, it follows suit with what we were bringing up with NASA. They have an objective in mind. They want to discover life out there, not on our planet. Their idea of ET or alien is going to be a microbe or something like that. Which to me is kind of the SETI, and now with Galileo, it's kind of aligned with our community, but it's not the phenomenon we're speaking of. It's two different perspectives there. So I think, I think we're being used to that end just a little bit. And probably I hate bringing this up publicly, but to me, that's the nail in the coffin with TTSA for me. It was like TTSA came out. They had all these, grand plans. They wanted to build a spaceship. And then as soon as they lost the money for the spaceship, who bailed on them? Like, that's when we kind of had our separation. And I don't know. I got to shut my mouth now because the Canadian deal that fell through with the Canadian education behind the scenes involved a lot of privatization of space conversations that I didn't expect to be happening. And it just kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Dave, I'm going to have to bail now. So thank you very much for the invitation. Tim, Nicole, Dan, it's been lovely to speak to you. Hopefully speak to some of you again. Thanks very much.
Graeme, thank you. Hey, we'll talk soon.
Take care. Okay. Cheers, Dave. Thanks. Bye.
I'm going to have to follow Graham's lead. I'm about done.
You're looking tired, buddy. You're looking tired.
Hey,
be careful for those 12 snowflakes tomorrow.
I'm going to watch out for them. I'll update you if anything bad happens.
I don't want to see you slip and fall, bringing out your snow shovel and you get caught on one of your ruts in your driveway because of all that snow.
Hey, it could happen. It's not an impossibility.
Oh.
All right. Well, I'm going to hit the road, guys. Good talking with you.
Take care, Dan.
That's awesome, man.
And then
God, we had a good panel tonight.
It was fantastic. Do you mind me asking one final question before I
guys go? I'm gonna quickly take my final break of the night here.
Okay, Nicole,
I'll be right back.
Can I ask you a question too? Because you and I have actually never gotten to directly dialogue, so this is kind of nice.
It is. Go for it.
So, do you think the reality of our space exploration and looking into exoplanets, is it all linked with what we're seeing in the paranormal world and the community and how money is being spent on the UAP investigation? Are we trying to make any links? Do you see any connections?
Maybe to further that advancement, I do see. My thoughts all revolve right now around this LEO economy that they're trying to form. And
explain what that is exactly.
A low Earth orbit economy. And it's about, it really is about the privatization of space around our planet and between the moon. And we've heard people talk about, like, to get to Mars, we have to go to the moon. That was another thing. And of course, we have people like Elon, who's like, yeah, let's go to Mars right now. Let's do it. I'll take 1 million people. Hooah. And there's just, we're launching more space stations over the next few years that'll be in orbit around our planet and I believe the moon. And I know all these are like little baby steps to get us further out into our own solar system, which takes money and investment. And the real privatization is in things like, like vacationing, around the planet. They need like civilian money up there to get this going and working, and that's why, I mean, ISS, I think it was back in 2010 or 2011. That's when they started taking on like private corporations and doing different experiments up on the space station. Aside from like the military industrial corporations, like Northrop Grumman, they have stuff up there. Procter and Gamble, they have stuff up
Right.
there. And it's all this trickles down to things we can use at home. It does. But I think they want that influx of cash up there. They want space tourism. They want people up there.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Do you
know Elon has those expectations of going to Mars in
Yeah.
5 years or whatever, but what's the longest we've had somebody in orbit up on a space station? I mean, in reality, I think when you look into it, we're like 40 years away from living on Mars, going there and people establishing economy or a colony or a base, and that comes from people I've spoken with in and outside of NASA that are involved in aerospace. So I think our expectations are kind of limited, but
Well, do you think that we have a better chance of getting confirmation or disclosure, whichever, through private industry like Elon Musk, rather than waiting sidelines for the governments of our planet to disclose?
I think it's going to come from the community. It's going to come from people or private citizens, and it's kind of that approach that Avi Loeb has said. He's like, we don't need the government's permission to research this. I think as our community gets more and more organized, and it's like I said earlier, if we can find that common ground and be a unified front, we're putting so much importance on government disclosure, and it's going to be so limited. I would love it if our community would just full blown throw their support behind SCU. I mean, they need more people, but they need funding and they need public acknowledgement. They need our community to stir up support for them.
Yeah. And you also do a lot of support for people that are up on the Hill. And you've brought up, I'm sorry, I'm flaking on his name, but he does great work on this topic up on the Hill. And
Bassett.
Thank you, Stephen Bassett. And so, okay, so do you think that we need more organizations like that and more public groups like that? Is that important? And here's the thing, what is the best result that a group like that could come up with?
I think at first it would continue the education, maybe not just for people in the government, but the population at large. I think if we see, I think of, like, just for instance, like PETA, when they first started, in their first few years or 5 years, even, nobody knew who PETA was, until they started getting money and support and people funding them and their activism truly started. And I think that's with any lobbying group. Once you have amassed a community that can have some sort of power of influence or money behind them, then you can really get down to business. And I think like mentioning SCU, I think we have the people in place there that are really dedicated to the phenomenon and not beholden to, their job or government. And they want this to be public. We're talking about discoveries of a lifetime here, or for all mankind, that sort of thing. And like Grant refers to it as the Super Bowl. We're in the Super Bowl. And can you imagine the first Super Bowl? Like how excited those two teams were? And that's almost what I think we need. We don't need a secretive group like Enigma that's like amassing other people's data and scrubbing it and like making it their own, and all the entities involved remaining anonymous. Like, I mean, we have a lot of brain power in SCU, and I just wish they had more support and more money. And yeah, and I even think we're not invested enough in Mufon. I mean, I know Mufon has their problems, but they've been around so long. They have done so much work in our community. They maybe aren't established enough in every single state or globally, but there is a presence there. And that's why, even with all of Mufon's faults, and I kick myself in my own butt for not contributing more to Mufon or joining, full force and being an investigator or, some sort of leadership role. But I think the more people that join organizations like this and try to come in and contribute their best, then we will get more out of them.
The problem that we have with MUFON, and I said this to one of their members of the board in a conversation that we had about a week ago on the phone, and we talked for about 45 minutes, is the board is different from its states and investigators, which I think is a real detriment to the organization, the way it's set up. And I think there needs to be more control from the board of directors on what they want to do. Dave McDonald, the executive director, is hell-bent to be getting into bed with the government side of ufology. He wants that. Yet that's not what MUFON stands for. MUFON is supposed to be the voice of the people, and they are supposed to be the activists of the people. Like I think you brought up a great example with PETA. Okay, MUFON is supposed to be our PETA, and they're not. They want to play games. They've never addressed the Bigelow situation. They've never addressed the John Ventry situation. They've never addressed the Jan Harzan situation. And that's why most people in the UFO community can't stand them, because they don't address anything. And they don't address what their focus is. If you expect people, good people, to give you their personal information, their personal experiences, and their reports, their photographs, their videos, or whatever, and then you're dumping on them to go get in bed with the government, that is talking out of both sides of your mouth.
Right, but consider for a moment, Dave, that they were representing the public when it came time for them to request public hearings. MUFON came to their aid to help them figure out what questions even needed to be asked. So I personally would be happy to see MUFON in that position.
I would too, but they still have to figure out what is their role. Their role is not supposed to be a liaison to the government, giving people's information and stories to the government. That's not their role. Their role is to be the activist for the UFO community. And if they're not going to be that, like, we have all talked, and you guys have all heard me talk recently about us needing a watchdog type group for UFOs. Okay. How can we get that if we don't have any group out there that we can trust? We can't trust Galileo. We can't trust the SCU because they're directionless. They're like, they're all nuts and bolts. UAPX is nuts and bolts. Enigma is going to be nuts and bolts and stealing records from people. Okay. Every group out there
they're acquiring.
pardon me, thank you.
Danny
Okay.
Sheehan. Danny Sheehan has been talking about this since you and I have discussed this. A watchdog group. He's saying he's he's linked it something with watchdog group and CE3, I think is what he's mentioned. Cases, CE3 cases or higher, I'm assuming. So, which is close encounters of the third kind. In case anybody doesn't remember.
The point is there's nobody standing up for the people. And they all want to get into the government coffers, and I think that's dangerous. And I think if Dave McDonald from MUFON wants to head down that road, that may be the beginning of the end for MUFON. It may. Right?
I think they're afraid of the experiencers, honestly. I think everybody is waiting for this, for the government to validate somehow, or they're really hung up on these military incursions, where it's kind of what I was trying to say before, when we have these things flying over middle America, you know, where everybody just thinks it's happening over our oceans or out to sea or, you know, things like that. These are happening worldwide. And yeah, I mean, it's just a shame that more people from the community don't have a voice yet. You know, we keep getting, like, even Bassett, and I adore his group and him. And I like arguing with him sometimes, actually, but you know, even he says, you know, experiencers will get their say after the truth embargo. And we keep hearing after this, after that, oh, experiencers will come into play later. Well, you know, it's us driving this movement. It's us that are getting visited and having experiences. And yet we get taken for granted because we're not a trained observer. You know, where, Dave, I know you and I have argued this point, you know, most recently with UAPX coming out and saying that 3 of their big events during their investigation came down to the ISS. And that was like a punch or a kick in the gut. I'm not sure what that was. It was like every sky watcher that I've known in this community for the last 20 years, you know, it's like, you know how to spot the ISS, and especially over the last 6 to 8 years with having apps and tech where you can identify these things. And it's just a shame. I think that was just such a fouled up moment, you know, on behalf of a good effort. I don't want to say I like their attempt, I guess. But that's just, oh, it's heartbreaking. It's like, for real, like, oh.
I hear you. You know, it would just be nice to have somebody, a group out there actually standing in the corner for the people. Whether that's Daniel Sheehan, whether that's the new group that Linda Thompson was hinting at that she was a part of, or that's beginning here. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know how to get it going or how one would start that. And that's why I say I believe MUFON needs to be that group. They need to be.
Well,
dots are not getting it done, people.
You know, I think Linda brought this up in the little bit of the program. It's, you know, the expectation is really high for groups like MUFON, but then when it comes down to it, it's just kind of like I said with the government, this comes down to money. And there is money in MUFON, but what people don't realize is that at your local level and these local chapters, and if you do devote your time and energy, you're also devoting your money. Like MUFON is all volunteer. Like what people pay for only goes so far, I mean, they aren't a billion-dollar industry or nonprofit, they're not rolling in the money like that. Do I think they could maybe spend their money more wisely? Yes, I've always thought that. I don't understand why there isn't a trickle down to local levels. But it's also this, it's a very grandiose idea to start things from scratch, which Tim, you might have some experience with this with your group. I mean, it sounds like something that's really easy to do. Like, hey, I'm going to get some people together. We're going to go investigate stuff. But then it's like herding cats. Once you can get everybody on the same page with the same idea of how you want to investigate, what you want to investigate, how much time everybody can devote to it, how much money can be kicked into this. And then even if that all goes well, something like COVID could happen and shut your shit show down, or other life catastrophes, health, illness, changing careers, jobs, whatever it is. Like even my local groups here with the little efforts that we try to do ourselves, it seems like they always fall short of what we really want. And that's also why, I mean, even the inception of MUFON, like they didn't come out of nowhere. They weren't like, let's form MUFON. They were like, let's hijack APRO. Okay, steal their Rolodex. You grab all their files. It really wasn't a smash and grab like that, but they did just kind of take over APRO and then rebrand it MUFON. And I hate saying things like this because I don't want to come out as completely anti-MUFON. But when I'm in the middle of my state. There's a MUFON group. There's 2 MUFON groups 6 hours north of me. There's one an hour away from me in a different state. And then there's another one like 3 hours south of me. The whole entire middle of Illinois just gets neglected. And there's 2 pretty solid UFO groups here, and we do our best. We do collect case reports. We'll try to go out and investigate on site if we can and if we have the resources, but it all comes out of our own pockets, and there's just never enough money. We don't have that benefactor. We don't have I guess I don't want to say we lack organization, but we do lack people. I mean, we have a lot of people that'll come to our group meetings, but very few people that'll actually go out in the field with us, which we've kind of combined forces with paranormal hunters and Bigfoot trackers because of this. And it's inevitable in this field anyways. It's all connected. But, I don't know. It's just so limiting. But I almost would like to see individual chapters in MUFON have more power. And if they can't, I don't know. It's like, do we need to be broken down into regions instead of states? I don't understand why the group in Missouri that's an hour away from me can't come into Illinois and investigate, where the 3 groups in Illinois are so far away from central Illinois. They never come down. They might take a case report, but there's never any field work that's done. So it's sad.
Yeah. Dave?
Very sad. Very, very sad.
But then, yeah, I don't know. People are like, I'm just going to form my own group. Okay. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm going to make my own reporting, sheet. It's like, oh, you left out like 10 questions. I don't know.
Right.
Or it's not in depth enough, or it doesn't get into the experiencer side. It'll just be like a sighting report, like
Yeah.
Data. Always need more data. And I think where even Mufon falls short outside of maybe the experience or resource team, it does take that continuing follow-up. I mean,
Yeah.
you have a contact case. It's not just like you report it and it's done. More often than not, there's more experiences that follow. There's a whole gamut of things, the hitchhiker effect or whatever people call it now. It's not just that. It's like the trigger. You get triggered and then all the high strangeness starts over years or decades. Like, people don't even realize, I think, all the high strangeness involved. So,
on that note, Nicole, I'm going to get you to hold on, Tim, get you to hold on here for a second. I want to say a big thank you to Pam, Nero, D. Cohen, Deb, Enki, Lavira, Monica, Area 51, Cat Chaser, Mr. Catfish, Deb Vaughn, Walker, Jeremy, and Ollie for all the super chats tonight. Very much appreciate the love and support. And don't forget, if you're new here, hit subscribe, ring that bell, give us a thumbs up or thumbs down if you haven't already, and leave a comment after the show of what you thought. Our Vegas trip, May 19th through 21st, is going to be awesome. All you got to do, if you want to go, pick your package and go to info@spacedoutradio.com, info@spacedoutradio.com. We need to get our figure out our numbers for the Golden Nugget. So we hope that many of you will choose to come join us. We got a great lineup of people who are showing up. I have put that on our Facebook page. I'm going to put the Facebook link in here for you. So that way you can join us in Las Vegas for some very cool, fun times. And we're going to make it all happen right there. So make sure you have, you let us know if you're going and which package you want. And the lineup that we have coming, let me get it for you here. If I can figure out how this page works. Discussion. There we go. We have coming Merle. Merle is coming. Merle. Jurgen Hess and Damian J. from the Hoodoo Tall documentary. Carter Bouchard, Nate Rudd, Corey Rudd, Varla Ventura, Bigfoot Rob, Brian Bowden, Ronald Murphy, the Crypto Guru. They're all coming in to talk cryptids with you. UFO side, we have Tom Whitmore, Science Bob, Katie Page, R. Keith Andrews, Joe Mergia, Tim Seanor, Michael Schratt, Melinda Leslie, Lorian Fenton, Misha Johnson, Grant Cameron, if he can make it, Jim Goodall, Geraldine Orozco, Ben and Joe from UFO Garage, Louie and Jason from UAP Studies, Steve Stockton from Missing Persons Mysteries, and maybe a visit from the Swamp Dweller. That's better than any conference you'll attend. Better, and they're all coming out to hang out with you. So do us a favor, meet us in Vegas. We want to hang out with you. Come hang out with us. $60 a person or $100 if you want a VIP. It's way cheaper than any other conference you'll attend. And you're going to get full access to everybody that you want to chat with. So on that note, I'm going to say goodnight to all of you. Tomorrow night on the show, we are going to talk with Pat Spain. We're going to get a little bit into the Bigfoot. Yeah, we're going to have some cryptid talk tomorrow night. Good night, everybody. Good night, Nicole and Tim. And I also want to say a big thank you to Don Schmidt, Cristina Gomez, Graeme Rendall, Dan Warren, Walter Bosley for joining us on this incredible panel tonight. It was just fantastic conversation. Good night, everybody. Take care.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
You need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.